Yes, ma'am. Start.
Hello. Okay, start. Hi, hello, good evening, guys. This is Sukanya Rana. I am the head of Means Initiative in the Civils Daily. Before we start, just let me make sure you guys can hear me. Can you write in the chat box if you can hear my voice? Okay, yeah, fine. I'm getting messages. A lot of people can hear me out. Cool. All right, great, great. So one more thing that I want to know from you guys, how many of you guys attempted the mains paper, which happened recently in 2022, and how many of you are planning to appear in 23? So give me that idea of the audience. So we'll move in that direction while discussing questions in the webinar. Okay, so we've got a lot of people who are attempting in 23. Great. So nobody yet who's appeared in 2022 mains. All right. A lot of students for 2023. So I think since there are not many students for this year's paper, so what we'll do is we'll keep the tilt of the paper for the students who are appearing in 2023. I'll discuss about what all questions are important, what all areas are important for mains preparation. Because guys, see, from right now till somewhere around mid-March, you've got ample of time where you can prepare for your mains. Because after that, you have to shift to your prelims mode, and that has to be exclusive. So preparation of your mains portion, your mains answer writing, everything is going to happen in these few months. Beyond that, if you start preparing for your mains preparation after prelims, then that can be very, very tricky. Because number one, you actually got a lot of revisions to do. Second is the content at that time becomes so much that compiling them together becomes so difficult that ultimately you have to compromise on some other things, like answer writing goes behind, looking at the previous year question papers goes behind. So all of these kind of take backseat, and these are actually very essential. Like when we look at the questions this year, I'll also tell you which questions are there from previous year papers, and also I'll tell you which all questions and themes have actually been covered in our test series. So this way you'll get an idea of how, properly preparing with mock test as well as previous year question papers can actually prepare you for some 60 to 70% of the paper. Rest might be very unpredictable, but I think even if you assure that much portion of your paper, it's a good amount of paper. So how do we move ahead with this discussion is we'll be taking care of 3 papers today, GS1, 2, and 3. Since we are taking 3 papers together, we'll be looking at major things that you had to write in each and every question from the paper. We'll be highlighting some major details. We'll not go into too much of detail because otherwise we'll not be able to cover all the 3 portions. We'll also look at some of the important portions that had to be mentioned in the questions. And for GS4, we'll hold a separate session, which will be held next week, right? That will be an exclusive session because I take care of ethics in Civils Daily. So I'll take a complete session on ethics so that you guys can take care of your GS paper 4. Essay, Abhimanyu is asking about essay. Abhimanyu, essay was taken by Zishan sir in the morning. And that session will be taken care by Zishan sir. And GS 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be taken care by me. All right. So before we get started, one more piece of information that I want to share with you guys is that we are having an offline webinar session with you guys, which will be taken at the Delhi center of Civils Daily office. And this will include our top mentors like Sajal sir will be there to give you a good, strategy for preparing 2023. There'll be other toppers like IPS Shubham. There'll also be Dilpreet Singh, who is also a ranker and also a student of Civils Daily. So these guys will also be present there. And if you go and attend that seminar and register with us, you'll get some preparatory session material, something worth of 7,000 free. So guys, I'll put the link in the chat box. You can go and register for this particular session, which is happening on Sunday. And now what we can do is we can start preparing, we can start looking at the questions that came this year. So let me just open the paper so that you guys can actually even look at the questions simultaneously when we're discussing. And if you have any other doubts, you can actually put up it in the chat box, and you can raise your hands also. We can have a discussion kind of a pattern also with respect to talking about the questions as well, right? Let me just yeah, so this is the paper, GS1 paper, which came in 2022. So guys, again, it's important that since most of you guys are going to appear in 2023, it's important that you understand what kind of structures and what kind of questions are being asked continuously in the paper, so that you can have that kind of same strategy to prepare in the next year's paper. All right. So the first question here is, how will you explain the medieval Indian temple sculptures represent the social life of those days? Now, this question, I would actually put it in a bit of a tricky question, because again, you have to connect the Indian temple sculptures with social life of those days, right? Now, again, this is tricky because you have to create a link between both of them. But you have to understand, there are a couple of topics in the art and culture which have been very repeating. Like there have been topics of coinage, sculptures, rock cut temples. You've had Chola and Gupta, that is again here in the paper. So these kind of themes are actually very popular continuously throughout even previous year papers, right? So again, if you have some basic ideas that you can link here with the social life, like when you're talking about Indian sculptures, you could have talked about, say, uh, uh, at the starting of the temples, you see a lot of sculptures made like of river goddess, like Ganga, Yamuna. Then you've got Dwarpals in the Dravida styles. Then you've also got Mithuns, right? In the Khajuraho temples, you've got Mithun images also. Then you've got Navgrahas, the ninth planet is also something that is sculpted on the Indian temples, that shows the auspicious planets and what do we worship about. Okay, Yashas, Yashikas. So all these kind of things actually are represented on the temple sculptures. They show what the usual social life people used to, appreciate the gods. They used to believe their fears. Their when you have river goddesses and Dwarpals at the temple sculpture, they show that how they would actually protect the inside of the temple. So these kind of linkages between the social life and Indian sculpture is something that you had to showcase in this question, right? Again, the tricky portion is, how do you link the Indian sculptures with social lives? And if you want to score well in these kind of papers, getting the names of the temples and the sculptures is something very important here, right? Again, when you're talking about sculptures, you can also talk about how there are other social events also depicted through sculptures, like the events of dancing, festivals. Then at Mahabalipuram, you've got whole tale of penance that has been depicted in the sculpture form. Then if you talk about some Buddhist, also some Buddhist stupas, if you want to add that section also, like it's talking about Indian temple, but you can give that extra also. Even in Buddhist stupas and everything, you've got sculpturing of Jakarta stories. Now that also depicts the social lives and people's festivals and what they think is important. So those kind of things is also linked here in this particular question, right? So again, guys, linking with social is something that has been continuously asked, even in the Sangam literature, something that has been asked again and again. So you have to shortlist some of the important portions, right? Like Indian sculpture was something that was asked even in our test series, because again, like I've said, these kind of topics are something that have been repeating in the previous year papers as well. So that was for the first question. Again, second question, I would say it was not pretty hard. like when you talk about why the armies of British East India Company, they were able to, fight against the Indian rulers and move ahead them, right? And now again, in this kind of question, it is important that you highlight the basic idea. Let's see, you can start with what British India Company is all about. How did it started? Okay, you can highlight those points, and then you can highlight their strengths. You can talk about the technology, you can talk about the leadership. We've got Clive, we've got Hastings, we've got Dalhousie, right? So all these important things, right? All these important points is something that you can highlight in these particular points. And then also you can highlight the battles, right, that happened between British India, Mysore, and the Maratha Kingdom, and all those things. So these kind of keywords, these kind of basic points is something that was necessary in this particular question. So if I divide this particular structure of this particular question, so first, what you do is you can start with introduction of British India Army, right? That can be part of your introduction. You can also talk about some of the battles that British East India Company that fought. You can draw a map of India. You can show some of the battle areas. You can mark some of the battles. You can mark some of the areas. Now, this is something innovative that you can add in your answer. Later on, then you can talk about what are the reasons why British India were able to, fight against the Indian rulers and win against them also. Then mark down technology, leadership, weaponry, all these points you can mark it down. Okay? Then the second portion is, other than these regions, there were some other political and social reasons also, right? The infighting and all those things also you can mark out in that sections, right? And finally, in the last portion, you can talk about how the rise of a better army, British India Army, it went on to become the basic strength of British rule in India, right? And then later on, the same model kind of became a model for Indian Army. Like British Indian Army actually inherited the British East India Company army, and that is how it actually, kind of goes into the post-independence era also. So that kind of legacy also you can talk about in your conclusion, right? So that was a basic structure you could have talked about in this particular question, right? So next question here, guys, the famine ones. Again, see, the famine kind of question is something that has been asked in your prelims as well, right? You've had like the years the famines have come and the commissions that were set up. So these kind of questions have come in your prelims also, and even in mains. Like if you mark the region, like it talks about the agricultural slowdown that happened during the British era, that this question is talking about, right? So I would actually consider this question to be not very hard, because again, you could have listed the reasons, like there was agricultural mismanagement. You could have talked about lack of technology, lack of initiative that was taken here. The revenue system was very draining out on the people. Okay, so the multiple of these things you can list out, the economic, the social, and the political reasons here, right, with respect to famines. One more activity, again, like I said, if you could have mentioned the commissions, right, that had happened and how they actually failed to rectify the situation, that would have been something kind of a supplementary and kind of a value addition in this question. See, guys, in mains preparation, since all of you are preparing in 2023, there'll be certain basic section, right? Basic section in the sense something that you can that you go through while you're reading. So why did famines happen in India, and why there was a certain spurt, is something that you can get from your spectrum also, right? So from the spectrum, from your basic books, from your notes, these kind of points is something that you can get in your answer. But while writing in mains, we need some value addition also. How will your answer look different from the answers of some other student? That is where the value addition comes into play. Like when we're talking about famines here, the first thing, like when we study for prelims also, that comes to the mind is those commissions. So if you can mention those commissions in this answer also, then that kind of adds value addition, right? So these kind of things, like again, when I talked about the Indian culture, you could have mentioned many temples like Khajuraho. You could have mentioned. You could have mentioned Mahabalipuram. So all these kind of temples where sculptures have happened, you could have talked about them. So giving those examples is something very important, right? So that kind of structuring is again very important. Uh, guys, guys, there are a lot of queries with respect to some specific GS portions, like commissions. If you want to get named here, Parikshit, I think you can Google them out. There's nothing very, difficult about them, because you study in the books. I think there are 5-6 commissions by year you can go through. Okay, there's nothing very hard about that. All right. There's another question here by Abhimanyu. Ma'am, in GS paper 1 and 2, should we write in paragraph or point wise? I think, guys, again, point wise is better technique, because you're able to mention 2-3 points together. When you shift to paragraph formats, it's kind of what happens is you write too much about one content. So that means number of points that are there in your portion, that reduces. So it's always better to extend your answer through points wise, so that you can create multiple themes, you can create multiple headings, right? So that will also allow you to have good amount of coverage. And guys, if I'm not audible, please log in again, because I think I'm audible to others people also. If I'm not particularly audible to you, you'll have to log in again, right? So we'll move to the next question, because we have to cover a lot of portion today. The next question, we start with the primary rocks. Now, guys, if you notice, this year we had the first 3 questions which were from history, and from 11, 12, 13, again, these questions were from history. Usually, the patterns is the first section is from history portion, and the first question, first or second question is usually from the art and culture section. So that is what happened here. This time we had 3 questions that were there from art and culture. So you can see, like, out of 6 questions, 3 were actually from art and culture portion, right? And we had modern India covered, I think, rest of the questions. Yeah. Modern India and post-independence actually covered rest of the questions. So particularly, we did not had any questions from world history this time. So again, guys, if you're preparing for world history next year, there might be a chance that there might be a question, right? Because this year it did not came. So there might be a chance that next year question comes from world history. So it's important that you start preparing for that. So make sure that you pick up just one single source of world history. Don't be very extensive with world history, because see, you might get a question, you might get 10 marker questions. So for that, make sure the amount of effort that you're putting in is equivalent to the marks you can fetch out of that subject, right? Don't go for, say, something very extensive like Norman Lewis, because I think Norman Lewis is more like a optional book or a PhD kind of a book, right? Pick up something smaller and revise it multiple times. Okay, that should be your strategy for world history, which you learn from this particular paper, right? Then we shift to the geography of this paper. Now again, geography, if you guys notice, this year, geography, yeah, you can cover Arjun Dev. The NCRT you can cover. That's a good book. The geography paper of this year was very from your basics. Like, most of the questions can actually be covered from your NCRTs. And multiple of those questions were actually covered in our test series as well, right? And some of the patterns which you can notice is actually from previous year question papers also. And we'll also release a document where we'll show which all questions were present even in our test series, so that you understand that even, some of the themes we can capture and we can actually practice. And that is why I'm saying writing mocks, practicing previous year is something very important for mains, right? So we've got the first question is primary rocks. Again, very simple question. I think NCRT may, it's like second, third, like initial chapters may you get that rock wala chapter, right? And again, You could have divided the question into first introduction, talked about what is primary rocks, then shifted to the body where you're talking about the characteristics and the types. Some value addition portion that you can do in this particular portion is, number one, when you're defining primary rocks, do add some of the examples. Like you can talk about granite, you can talk about basalt, you can talk about gabbros. Also in that section, if you can draw a small diagram of how primary rocks are formed, right? I think that diagram is also present in NCERT. So that will also be a good value addition in this particular question, right? Other than that, you've got characteristics properly covered in the NCERT. The types is also properly covered. So nothing much very difficult. I think we would put this question in a very, very easy category. We've got a question, NCERT is enough for geography or should I refer some? No, Rishabh, I think NCERT is very much enough. Just go through the 2 NCERT books, right? Physical one and the 11th, 12th, all the NCERTs you can go through. Other than that, if you want to, add some value addition, I think number 2 principles, again, go through previous year question papers. And second, practice as much answer writing as you can. I think these 2 fundas are the most important while you're preparing. See the next question here. This was, I think, a tricky question. The color coding warnings of cyclone prone areas. Okay. Now, if you had actually gone through your current affairs, you would have read Hindu paper, tab to I think this question could have been easy, because a lot of time we hear that there's this orange color coding warning for the cyclone happening in, say, Odisha or on the eastern coastal region, right? So these kind of news were actually covered on a daily, usual patterns when we are going through our newspapers. How you can take inspiration from previous year question paper? Yes, red alert is also there. Abhimanyu, there are basically 3 categories. There's yellow, there's orange, and there's red. So you had to talk about that particularly, right? And again, guys, you could have drawn a map of India here and shown how, which areas are more cyclone prone and all those things. I think that could also have given you a good additional kind of value addition in your answer. Okay, that is also one thing you could have done here in this particular question. Again, I was talking how previous year can actually inspire you, because if you go through previous year question papers, right? then actually, sorry guys. If you go through previous year question paper, then actually there was a question on cyclones, like how they are named, right? So that was also a very tricky question that was actually asked in cyclones, right? So if you go through previous year question, you can actually understand what are the patterns and the tricky things that are being asked from that section. So you've had a tricky question on cyclones, right? So when you revise that topic, it is actually your responsibility that if you see any other news coverage with respect to cyclones, you go through that also. And in fact, if you go through IMD site, right, there's a complete FAQ section on cyclones. And they're actually covering the whole theory behind cyclones very, very extensively. Like what are super cyclones, what are the wind ranges, everything they're covering. In fact, these color-coded things also is being covered in that section, right? So again, the same question might not repeat from previous year question paper, but the themes can be very repeating, right? Guys, it's the official website of IMD only. Like you can, on Google, you can type IMD and cyclones, right? And you'll see that particular whole section, FAQ section covering on cyclones there, right? So this question could have been tricky if you would not have covered your current affairs section. But other than that, I think if you knew the basic warnings, like some of the, actually one more thing, like some of the questions, some of the students, they ask me that if we don't know about anything, like say example, they don't know anything about these color codings, then what do we do in this particular kind of questions, right? So that is also an interesting question to ask, right? So now what do we do here when we have no particular idea about this question, right? So obviously we cannot write anything about color coding as long as we can take some guesswork. And like somebody said, red color is something that comes to your mind. Other than that, other colors are not something that might come to your mind, right? So red alert is something that you can actually make a guesswork and link it to something, extreme situation when the cyclone has actually happened or it is happening, right? So that kind of common sense linkage you can make, right? Other than that, what you can do in this question is you can start your introduction talking about what are cyclones, right? You can start with that. You can draw a small diagram of cyclone formation. You can also mark you can also draw the map of India and show which all regions are very much prone. So that introduction is done, right? IMD and its responsibility, you can actually talk about with respect to cyclone management, right? So you can talk about color coding, you can talk about naming, you can talk about predictions and all those things, right? So one page content is full, completely, I think you can write with common sense, right? Now, this kind of thing you actually do when you don't know the question. You take common sense knowledge from whatever the question is present and write that content so that at least you can fetch 1 to 2 marks in the paper, right? So that is also one technique that you can actually learn with answer writing and attempting as much mocks and previous year you can. So next question here is with respect to Deccan Trap. And again, they're asking you about the natural resources. So again, guys, I think this is also something from your basic portion, from your NCRTs, you cover Deccan Trap. And in fact, you can take common knowledge. जिसे आपको पता है Deccan Trap है. So some things are like, the soil, right? You get black soil. It's very famous for cotton region, right? So when you're talking about natural resources, the first thing that should come to your mind is how do I break it down? So Deccan Trap, natural resources, number one, I can make one heading of soils. Number two, I can make second heading of water. So water related, you can actually talk about some river system that is there in the Deccan area. Second, the coastal region also you can talk about, right? That might not be the very important region as a natural resource, but since it's close by also, so that can actually be a potential natural resource also, right? So water related, two things can come into play. Then third is the mineral resources, right? So again, the mineral resources you can talk, there's a lot of gemstones that are actually present in this particular region. Like there's quartz, there's chalcedony, orgonite, all kind of these stones are actually present, right? So these kind of, so basically 3 headings you can actually create here. You can talk about the coastal region, you can talk about the water, you can talk about the soil. Again, soil related, you can break it down into multiple cropping areas, right? 2-3 crops which are famous in this particular region. You can talk about that. When you're talking about water, 2-3 things you can talk about. Then when you're talking about the minerals, you can again break it down into multiple regions there, right? So again, like you said, why do I write in point system? Because again, point systems helps you to divide the question into multiple headings. ठीक है? Multiple headings में आप divide कर सकते हो and multiple sections में आप उसको convert करके जब लिखते हो तो multiple points आते हैं और multiple examples डलते हैं. ठीक है? उससे क्या होता है? Again, the answer becomes much more better presented. And अगर आपको इसमें value addition डालना है तो Deccan Trap वाला जो region है उसका diagram draw करो. ठीक है? उधर पे जो मेजर जैसे मैप पे बता दो where is the Deccan Trap, right? There's another question by Gautam about NCRTs and are enough. Yes, NCRTs are enough, like I said. Guys, there's another question here coming. Diagrams and mind maps are also count in word limit. Yeah, they do count. See, again, the space that is given by UPSC to you is actually like for 10 marker, you get 2 pages. So whatever content you're writing and presenting it neatly is actually part of that content, the word limit that you're writing in the pages. And usually diagrams and word mind maps actually reduces the word limit or the amount of words that you're writing in the question, right? So that way it becomes much more easier. And also GC Neon can be done for your geography section. But again, Vivek, I think NCRTs, they form a much more fundamental book for geography, right? Uh, the next question here is on wind energy. Again, this particular question was very much covered in our test series in the FLTs, because again, this question is very easy to form and very easy to write. Okay? Like solar energy, wind energy, something that we've been continuously talking about in our renewable energy resources that we have to form and let them grow, right? So again, this question is something that you should have prepared. Like these are noble renewable energy resources. Acha, in this, some of the value addition which is important is number one, guys, you're mentioning about Tamil Nadu, right? So you can mention the India's commitment with respect to wind energy. That can come as a value addition. Number two is the major states, like you can mark out on a map, you can draw the map of India, you can mark out various regions where wind energy is important, and you can also mark out various states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, all these kind of places where wind energy play a huge role, right? So map is also a second addition. The content, right? Offshore wind energy, right? That also something that you can talk about, offshore and onshore, both of them. All right. And also the policy making that have been the government of India that has been working with respect to national wind energy mission. That is also something that should have been part of this particular answer. So these are the value addition content that was actually necessary in this particular question, right? Let's move on to the next question. I think this was a much more easier question. See, the next question, we start with the society portion. Now again, society portion from last 2 years, if you've noticed, is something that it's actually started to talk about more and more, questions which are there in your current affairs. Like it's linking current affairs with your society question. Like work from home is something that is very much a contemporary topic. Now it has been linked to the society portion, right? So last year we had Bitcoin that was linked to the society portion, gig economy, empowerment of women, something related to the society portion. So a lot of contemporary themes are nowadays being linked to your society portion, right? So these are the portions that you have to look for. Obviously, there's some common themes like question on regionalism, question on secularism. These kind of questions are pretty common. And even in this year paper, we've seen a lot of these themes repeat, right? So, but there are two types of questions that you need to focus upon. Number one is your regular theme-based questions, regionalism, communalism, socialism, the idea of infighting between various sects and regionalism, fight between states, language related. This year the language related topic was also there in the current affairs, but it did not came in the paper, but it was an important theme as well, right? So a lot of these questions were there. Okay, so two types of question you have to prepare for society. Number one is current affair themes, gig economy, work from home. How do you link second tier with the culture of consumption? Okay, these kind of things you have to link. And second is your common theme questions like secularism, regionalism, and communalism, all these kind of topics, right? So these are two portions you look out for in the society portion. So when you're talking about, again, explore and evaluate the impact of work from home on family relations. There's a question by Raju. How do you identify these themes you mentioned? Again, how do you identify themes is, again, like I've been talking about, go through previous year question papers, attempt as many as mocks you can, guys. That is the only ways. Practice, exactly like Abhimanyu is saying, practice is very important here. Work from home, again, when you're talking about the impact on family relations, guys, make sure there are two impacts you're talking about here in this question. Number one should be the positive impact that is happening on the family relations, and number two is the negative impact. If you mention just one side of the story, you'll not get full marks on this particular question. So when we're talking about the positive impact, you can talk about how, people have had more time with their family, the working mothers, how they've had more easier job scenarios. They're able to carry forward their jobs, right? Children, how they are able to connect to the families. Remember when we talk about the value system, how it's degrading because the children, they do not find enough time in spending it with their parents, right? So that kind of problems is something that has reduced. Even financially, financially also, there's a lot of different upgradation that has allowed work from home culture that has happened in family. So again, family relations in that kind of scenario, they improve, even though economic reason might not be directly connected, but economic reason always have impact on the social reason, right? There's also gender neutrality. Yes, that has happened. So women empowerment is actually a good theme here that you can actually cover. In fact, the women's side can come both in the positive and the negative also, because if you remember in the news, this work from home culture actually started there was a lot rise in the domestic violence that actually happened in the houses. So that rise is also something that you can talk about in the negative scenario, the increasing work pressure, the impact on health, relationships. Okay, like there's no major timelines with respect to your working scenarios. Okay, so that is also kind of disrupting your family relations. So these kind of negative things is also something that you can show in this particular question, right? A lot of people, yeah, the divorce rate, yes, you can include such case studies. They are perfectly good examples, right? Like when I talked about the family relations, the domestic violence, how they are increasing and everything, you can mention all of these. See, more and more examples you add in your answer, the better it is. I am trying to just mention the aspects that should be there in your answer, right? So both positive and negative is something that is important here. The next question is also very interesting. Like it talks about how there's this growth of tier 2 cities and how middle class, there's this rise of new middle class, and how you have to link it to the culture of consumption, right? So does anybody know what is meant by the culture of consumption here? Mm, you can write in the chat box. A lot of students are actually talking about this question. Go ahead. Tell me in the chat box about this culture of consumption. What do you understand by this? HRA benefits. HRA benefits given to the employee as their disadvantage. No, we're not talking about HRA benefits directly in this question. Use and throw concept. Okay, Western concepts like spending more. Okay, consumerist mentality. Yeah, that kind of thing is something that you can connect. Good answers coming here. The pattern in which population is consuming goods and services, right? This is a good connection here. Increase in consumption expenditure with respect to food and consumerism, right? So see, the idea of culture of consumption here is how your social status, how your societal values, how your community activities actually creates an impact upon what you purchase and what you consume in the goods and services sector, right? So all of that, see, when you shift from rural economy, suddenly you become a second tier city. So your consumption pattern, because see, your social status there is completely changing, right? Your needs is completely changing. The community related expenditure is completely changing, right? So that culture of consumption actually changes there, right? So when you're talking about the second tier in this question, how do you start your introduction? You can talk about the growth of second tier cities. You can talk about some of the schemes that the government had brought in. You can talk about Amrut, right? You can talk about some other initiatives that the government has taken with respect to development of cities. Now, in the second tier cities, what you can do is this new middle class. How is there this rise of how is there this rise of new middle class. You can talk about how the jobs and everything is increasing, so the value of the amount of money that is coming and the investment that is coming into city has allowed to create a middle class here. Now again, people are talking about gig economy and digital and smart city, uh, right? But guys, gig economy is something that is actually more oriented towards your metro cities right now. uh, Revenge consumerism, right? That can also happen. But again, see, in tier 2 cities, you understand, I think एक link आपको यहाँ पे ये बनाना चाहिए कि this new middle class, actually there's two side of consumption here. The rural side of consumption is something that is still existing in this particular economy, क्योंकि it is tier 2. It's just shifted from that. It's kind of a linkage between the metro cities and the rural area, right? So the culture of consumption is actually divided between both. So this new middle class is actually slowly shifting to your rural, to your urban economy also. Like we see including of more and more brands here, MNCs that are shifting, service sector led, culture is something slowly coming into these cities. Like you might have seen, like अगर आप कभी जैसे कुछ कुछ जगह पे जाते हो, these tourist cities, they're also kind of developing into tier 2 cities. So some cities have these companies like Ola and Uber, but in some cities still, because of the unions, they are not able to make that impact in this particular city, right? So again, that culture of consumption is somewhere in between the rural economy as well as the city economy. It's kind of a linkage. अगर हम consumption की बात करें, तो it's kind of a linked economy. It's not working on either side. ठीक है? तो ये जो culture of consumption है, and ये जो new middle class है, and जो second tier है, आप इन तीनों को कैसे connect करोगे यहाँ पे? ठीक है? तो ये वाले ideas if you can bring in, ठीक है? आप रूरल इकोनॉमी के साथ भी लिंक करो. आप जैसे ब्रांड कॉन्शियसनेस इज समथिंग दैट इज स्लोली क्रीपिंग इन. ठीक है, तो वो वाला भी आप ये बताओ कि न्यू मिडिल क्लास है तो परचेसिंग इकोनॉमी बढ़ी है. गुड. आईटी टेक्नोलॉजी समथिंग दैट इज कमिंग इनटू, right? So these kind of things is something that you can highlight in this particular answer. ठीक है, तो ये तीन concept is something that you need to put out in this particular question, right? Next, we've got the final 10 marker from your society question, right? अब इसमें क्या है? Again, this is I think कुछ लोगों को ये tricky question भी लगा है, कुछ लोगों को ये simple question भी लगा है. Like it's talking about that there is a huge diversity in the tribal communities in India, and in which specific context should they be considered as a single category? ठीक है? So there are two portions that you actually had to divide your question in the body. ठीक है? Number one question, we talk about the diversities among the tribal community. ठीक है? Before, good, problems and rights. A lot of suggestions here. Problems and rights faced by the states. Diagram representing tribals. Yes, you can do that also, but again, diagrams a lot. There might be a lot of tribals that you'll be mentioning here. If you can bring out maybe 2-3 in every region, if you can do that I think that will also be good. But you'll have to actually name them out. Okay? Because only then that diagram will have that value addition. Okay? So first portion of diversity batao. Diversity kya rahegi? Can anybody tell me what all diversities is going to be there with respect to tribal community? Like cultural है, हाँ, right, special state, हाँ, regional, linguistic, yes, good. Environmental की जगह geographical diversity if you want to talk about. ठीक है, mode of inheritance can actually come in your culture only. All right, religious, good. Topography, geographical. Rituals again. So major themes अभी तक हमारी कितनी आई है? हमारी आई है अभी cultural theme. उसके अंदर आप 2-3 areas में convert कर सकते हो. आप rituals, customs, आप उसमें आप a lot of different. ठीक है, आप उसमें culture वगैरह ये सब उस traditions, spirit, जो भी आपके customs है उसमें culture related वो divide करो. फिर ज्योग्राफी आ गया, तो ज्योग्राफी में भी आप डिफरेंट पैटर्न्स बताओ, ठीक है, कैसे डिफरेंट ट्राइबल्स का ज्योग्राफिकल पैटर्न डिफरेंट रहता है। फिर लिंग्विस्टिक आ गया, ठीक है, तो वो एक अनदर रीजन आ गया। यहाँ पे somebody was writing that anthro student is going to have advantage here. See again, I think optional throughout is something that maintains. अब किसी का हिस्ट्री ऑप्शनल होगा तो उसके पहले 3 क्वेश्चन और ये 11th में एडवांटेज मिलेगा, किसी का ज्योग्राफी होगा तो बाकी क्वेश्चंस में। So I don't think optional as such is something that gets you through completely. I mean, every optional can help you somewhere in the paper. ठीक है? अच्छा, single category. That was the first portion when you talked about the difference between the diversity of the tribal region. The second portion आता है culture of consumption. Sorry, the single category in which the tribals can be quoted. Again, what is the single category? Can you make a guess here, guys? What is the single category? Nationalism. Okay, all right. Modernism. All right. Okay, ठीक है, there was backwardness. Yeah, that is also good. ठीक है, education. ठीक है, good. I think एक socio-economic backwardness की अगर हम बात करें, ठीक है, तो आई थिंक उसके अंदर आप ये सारे पोर्शंस को मेंशन कर सकते हो। जैसे आपने पर्टिकुलरली वर्नेबल ट्राइबल्स की आपने बात करी यहाँ पे अभिमन्यु, दैट इज आल्सो समथिंग दैट यू कैन डिवाइड इनटू दैट सोशियो इकोनॉमिक बैकवर्डनेस। तो एक जो सिंगल कैटेगरी बनती है, ठीक है, वी कैन एक्चुअली डिवाइड सोशल इनटू मल्टीपल एस्पेक्ट्स। आपने हेल्थ, एजुकेशन, न्यूट्रिशन, ऑल दीज थिंग्स यू कैन टॉक अबाउट व्हेन यू टॉकिंग अबाउट इकोनॉमी। तो आप वहां पे इंक्लूजन, जितना भी ये अलूफनेस, ये सब, मतलब जितने भी फाइनेंशियल या इकोनॉमिक एम्प्लॉयमेंट, ये सारी चीजें जो आप बात कर सकते हो, यू कैन ब्रिंग इनटू दैट सेक्शन। तो दैट बैकवर्डनेस वाला और वो जो सोशियो इकोनॉमिक जो कैटेगरी है, आई थिंक वो एज अ सिंगल कैटेगरी बन के हम उसको सब डिवाइड करके इस आंसर को इजिली टैकल कर सकते थे, राइट? सो again, this question might look a bit difficult, but once you identify the single category properly, तो I think properly आप 2 सेक्शन बना के बाद में एक वे फॉरवर्ड भी आएगा, ठीक है, नीचे एक वे फॉरवर्ड भी आएगा। इंट्रोडक्शन में आपको ट्राइबल की बात करना है तो आप जवाहरलाल नेहरू जी का जो पंचशील कंसेप्ट था वो डाल सकते हो। अगेन दैट विल ब्रिंग, जैसे somebody was asking here कि how will your question be different from other people's question, तो अगेन these kind of value additions, ठीक है, तो वो वाला कंसेप्ट यहाँ पे डालो। उन्होंने वो कंसेप्ट बताया था कि कैसे ट्राइबल को इंटीग्रेट करना है सोसाइटी में, तो जवाहरलाल नेहरू हैड टॉक्ड अबाउट दैट पोर्शन, ठीक है, तो वो वाला पोर्शन डाल सकते हो आप। श्वेता इज आस्किंग व्हाट अबाउट द नंबर ऑफ पॉपुलेशन लेफ्ट आउट। yeah, a lot of acts and committees, yeah, Kaka committee, PISA act, good amount. See, population left out, I think वो backwardness वाला ही point है श्वेता, यहाँ पे कुछ major different नहीं है उस point में, ठीक है? Right, so these were the 10 markers. So how did you find the 10 markers? I think this year, since you guys are appearing in 2023, आपको कैसा लग रहा है? मतलब अभी तक, do you think you can tackle the paper, or is it very difficult, or it's something that is average, right? A lot of so this year the paper was actually not very difficult. You could have actually attempted. So tabhi I'm saying that guys, start practicing your mains preparation from now itself, because since you guys are something that you are actually preparing in 2023 and 2022 ka paper hi aapko dekh ke aisa lag raha hai, if it's manageable, it's not difficult. The only difference that you have to create in the paper is getting that value addition, getting that facts in your answer. ठीक है, managing the whole paper, writing on time. So these are the things that you actually have to practice. ठीक है, let's move on to the 11th question. Again, the 11th question is actually not a very hard question. ठीक है, it's talking about the reorganization of states, and it actually starts not from post-independence era. It actually starts from mid-19th century. तो हमारा ब्रिटिश एरा से आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हो, 1850s के अराउंड आप स्टार्ट करो, ठीक है। एंड आप इसमें क्या कर सकते हो, बेसिकली इसमें क्या है, एक तो मैप्स बनेंगे, ठीक है, मैप्स विल बी अ गुड वैल्यू एडिशन इन दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन। सेकंड इज हाउ डू यू डिवाइड द क्वेश्चन, ठीक है। आप या तो प्री इंडिपेंडेंस वाला एक सेक्शन बनाओ, उसमें 2-3 एरियाज मेंशन करो कि कैसे जब ब्रिटिश ने कैप्चर करना शुरू किया, यू टॉक अबाउट द बक्सर, द प्लासी एंड ऑल दीज वॉर्स यू कैन स्टार्ट विद, ठीक है। फिर मराठा से कैप्चर हुआ एंड ऑल दीज रीजन्स, कैसे आपका नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी हमारा वेरियस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज बनी, रीअरेंजमेंट हो गया, ठीक है, हमारे प्रोविंसेस वगैरह बनने लगे, देन देयर वाज रूलर्स, उनका अलग सेक्शन था, ठीक है। तो वो रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन वाला आप एक प्री इंडिपेंडेंस वाला आप बता सकते हो, ठीक है, उसको मेजर सेक्शन में डिवाइड करो। एंड सिंस इट्स सेइंग इट्स एन ऑनगोइंग प्रोसेस, ठीक है, तो आप पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस से स्टार्ट करो एंड अभी लेटेस्ट जो हमारा हुआ है ना तेलंगाना वाला, वहां तक जाओ आप, ठीक है, क्योंकि ये अगेन 15 मार्क का क्वेश्चन है, तो आपको 3 पेजेस भरने हैं, तो आपके पास इक्वल अमाउंट ऑफ स्पेस है। पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस में एक अलग मैप बनाओ, ठीक है, या बोडोलैंड एंड ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ, ये एक फर्दर इशू आएगा, ठीक है। वंस यू मेंशन कि कैसे रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन चल रहा है, उसके बाद द फर्दर डिमांड्स व्हिच आर स्टिल गोइंग ऑन, ठीक है, वो वाला एक सेक्शन आप नॉर्थ ईस्ट में बता सकते हो। आप बाकी रीजन्स में जो डिमांड्स हैं अभी, ठीक है, वो मेंशन कर सकते हो। तो बेसिक आइडिया इज कि प्रॉपर डिविजन इन दिस पर्टिकुलर रीजन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ठीक है। इस क्वेश्चन में 2 सेक्शन डिवाइड करो, मैप्स दोनों में आप ड्रॉ कर सकते हो, ठीक है। एंड अगेन व्हेन यू टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, साथ साथ में आप रीजन्स भी मेंशन कर सकते हो, ठीक है, क्योंकि आप एक लेआउट तो दे ही रहे हो मुझे, टेम्पोरल वे में तो जा ही रहे हो, साथ साथ में रीजन्स वगैरह भी अगर आपको कवर करने हैं तो आप वो भी डाल सकते हो, ठीक है। एंड लास्ट में आपने बताया करंट इश्यूज क्या है, एक वे फॉरवर्ड भी आएगा, ठीक है, कि आगे वे फॉरवर्ड अप्रोच क्या होनी चाहिए विद दिस रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ द स्टेट वाला अप्रोच, ठीक है। तो दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी मेंशन्ड हियर। yes, Ladakh and JNK also is something that you can mention again। तो हम ये पूरा journey we'll try to highlight here, ठीक है। तो this question again not that very hard question, but again dividing into proper sections is very important। somebody is asking how do we start the introduction? Again guys, see, when you're talking about the political reorganization, which article, why are you inserting article here? This is a geography related question, you don't have to start with articles here। आपको polity related content नहीं डालना है इस पेपर में, ठीक है। be very careful also, इतना segregation रखो कि कौन सा geography related question है, कौन सा history related question है, कौन सा polity related question है, the content should be according to that, ठीक है। next is again Chola and Gupta period, मतलब ये तो इतना ही common question है that you guys should have been able to write it properly, मतलब not मतलब ये तो I think one of the most easiest question है, ठीक है। इसमें again what you can do is आप 2-3 सेक्शन में डिवाइड कर सकते हो, आप 2 सेक्शन में करो, पहले गुप्ता का अलग होना चाहिए, चोला का अलग होना चाहिए। अगेन इट्स आस्किंग अबाउट इंडियन हेरिटेज एंड कल्चर, तो अगेन यू कैन डिवाइड इट इनटू मल्टीपल सेक्शंस। आप आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर का अलग रखो, ठीक है, आर्किटेक्चर का अलग रखो, फिर आप कॉइनेज का अलग रख लो, मतलब मल्टीपल हेडिंग्स रखो, स्कल्पचर्स रखो, आप लिटरेचर रखो, आप साइंस रिलेटेड रखो, ठीक है। जैसे साइंस में अगर आप यहाँ पे बात करें तो अगेन आर्यभट्टा ये सब वगैरह आ गए, चोला में आप उनकी नेवी वगैरह उस रिलेटेड आप बात कर सकते हो, ठीक है। एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड हियर बिकॉज दिस क्वेश्चन इज अगेन आस्किंग यू अबाउट इंडियन हेरिटेज एंड कल्चर, तो आपको एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव डिटेल्स नहीं देंगे यहाँ पे, ठीक है। डिवाइड द गुप्ता पीरियड एंड द चोला पीरियड एंड लिस्ट डाउन द आर्ट एंड कल्चर रिलेटेड पॉइंट्स हियर। what should be the conclusion here in this question? Again, see, conclusion does not have to be very very detailed here because again यहाँ की आपकी body में the content is going to be very much, ठीक है। आप यहाँ में मैप भी ड्रॉ कर सकते हो, आप गुप्ता पीरियड की मेजर जैसे टेम्पल्स है वो वहां पे मार्क कर दो, ठीक है, उनका रीजन है वो वहां पे मार्क कर दो, तो 2-2 मैप्स भी बन जाएंगे आपके, ठीक है। दैट कैन ऑल्सो हैपन। एंड अगेन हिस्ट्री में कंक्लूजन्स किस डायरेक्शन में जाते हैं, या तो जैसे एक जाता है आपका जैसे आप किसी चीज का सिग्निफिकेंस बात कर सकते हो, जैसे ओवरऑल आपने बता दिया कि कैसे Gupta period and Chola period overall how did it became a very important heritage part of the Indian culture and ठीक है, कैसे उन्होंने एक important significant role play किया for future, you know, आगे जाके फ्यूचर जैसे मुगल्स हैं इन सब ने उनकी टेक्निक्स कैसे अडॉप्ट की, ठीक है। या लेगेसी पोर्शन में भी आप बात कर सकते हो कि किसी चीज की क्या लेगेसी रही है, ठीक है। दैट काइंड ऑफ कंक्लूजन यू कैन ऑल्सो टॉक अबाउट। यूजुअली हमारा सिग्निफिकेंस या लेगेसी पोर्शन में ही रहता है, हिस्ट्री पोर्शन का, बिकॉज अगेन इन सम पोर्शन यू कैन हैव वे फॉरवर्ड. जैसे अब ये पॉलिटिकल रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन वाले में एक स्मॉल वे फॉरवर्ड आप डाल सकते थे. जहां पे इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल, ट्राई टू टॉक अबाउट द लेगेसी ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर पोर्शन, की वो फ्यूचर में क्या रहेगा उसका, ठीक है, या उस चीज का सिग्निफिकेंस यू कैन टॉक अबाउट इफ दैट इज नॉट डेल्ट इन द क्वेश्चन इटसेल्फ. Yes, you can mention coins also, Abhishek. Next is an interesting question, actually. It was actually, I think, one of the tough questions in this particular paper. It's actually talking about bull and lion figures and their importance with respect to the Indian mythology, art and architecture. ठीक है. अब हमें सारनाथ वाला या हमारा नेशनल सिंबल सबको पता है, ठीक है, दैट इज समथिंग दैट वी ऑल नो, ठीक है, वो हम लिख देंगे. बट द प्रॉब्लम विद दिस क्वेश्चन इज कि आपको पूरा 3 पेज लिखना है. अब उस 3 पेज में आप कैसे इतना कंटेंट लिखोगे? गिव मी सम आइडियाज गाइस, कि लायन एंड बुल फिगर्स, हाउ दे आर रेलेवेंट इन इंडियन माइथोलॉजी, ठीक है, आर्ट एंड आर्किटेक्चर. गिव मी सम आइडियाज हियर. Hindu religion, right? Buddha, right? Harappan, right? Good. Mahabharat ka example. What is this Mahabharat example? Please explain. Bull figure on coins. I think one example here which talked about Harappan Buddhism. See, again, what you can do here is actually आप जब lion and bull figure की बात कर रहे हो ना, आप उसको religion wise भी divide कर सकते हो. हाँ, शिवा पार्वती. जैसे आप हिंदू रिलीजन की बात कर लो, आप बुद्धिज्म में बात कर लो, ठीक है. सो दैट विल गिव यू गुड अमाउंट ऑफ कंटेंट, कि आपको माइथोलॉजी में भी आप बात कर सकते हो. जैसे बुद्धिज्म में अगर हम माइथोलॉजी में जताका स्टोरीज में हम बात करें, तो यूजुअली जो बुल होता है दैट इज एक्चुअली अ ज़ोडिएक साइन ऑफ टॉरस, ठीक है. अब दैट वाज द मंथ इन विच बुद्धा वाज एक्चुअली बोर्न, ठीक है. तो दैट लिंकेज इज ऑलवेज देयर, ठीक है. एंड अगेन आप अगर लायन की बात करो तो बुद्धिज्म में दैट एक्चुअली शोज कि हाउ एनलाइटमेंट वाज अचीव्ड बाय द लॉर्ड बुद्धा, ठीक है. तो ये दो कंसेप्ट्स आपके बुद्धिज्म में वैसे कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं. अब जैसे किसी ने यहाँ पे शिवा पार्वती लिखा है, अगर मैं वैसे बात करूं, जो बुल है, जैसे हम कहते हैं ना नंदी, तो अगेन दैट बुल इज एक्चुअली, हम शिवा के साथ कंसिडर करते हैं ना कि वो उनकी सवारी होती है, राइट? सो दैट काइंड ऑफ पोर्शन is something that you can actually connect there, ठीक है. एंड अगेन अगर हम बुल की बात करें तो इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन, ठीक है, उसमें भी हमारा बुल एंड लायन काफी मच दिखाया जाता था. जैसे वो जो एक जो मेजर सील थी उनकी, ठीक है, पशुपतिनाथ सील, उनके ऊपर भी ये सारे एनिमल्स दिखते थे, ठीक है. सो इवन फ्रॉम इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन वी कैन सी दैट कनेक्शन बिटवीन लायन एंड बुल फिगर्स, ठीक है. अगेन अगर हम विष्णु के अवतार की बात करें, सो वी गॉट दिस लायन भी उनके अवतार में दिखता है. इनफैक्ट वो वर्णा वाला जो है, ठीक है, ये वो हमारे काफी सारे स्कल्पचर्स में दिखता है, ठीक है. वो विष्णु के अवतार जिसमें वो लायन, जिनके 3 हेड होते हैं, लायन होते हैं, ये सब होता है, ठीक है. बुल फाइट, जलीकट्टू, हाँ, जलीकट्टू ऑल्सो यू कैन मेंशन, ठीक है. नरसिम्हा, राइट, दैट इज व्हाट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट हियर, ठीक है. तो वो दिख जाता है. अगेन लायन, आपकी जो पार्वती है, उनकी सवारी इज ऑल्सो इज हर व्हीकल, ठीक है. तो अब ये जो सारी चीजें हैं, इनफैक्ट ये कॉमन सेंस की चीजों से आप कनेक्ट कर सकते हो, ठीक है. जैसे आप जैसे जब दिवाली की पूजा होती है, उसमें जब पोस्टर लगता है तो हमेशा दिखता है कि वहां पे लायन एज अ सवारी दिख रही है, ठीक है. दुर्गा पूजा है तो उसमें भी वो दिखता है कि नीचे लायन है, ऊपर दुर्गा माँ खड़ी हुई है, ठीक है. तो ऐसी ऐसी कॉमन सेंस वाली चीजें भी आप यहाँ पे माइथोलॉजी के थ्रू कनेक्ट कर सकते हो. बुद्धिज्म वाला भी आप वहां पे, मतलब वो स्तूपा की बात करो, नेशनल एम्बलम की बात करो, वो सब वहां पे दिखाओ, ठीक है. दैट विल ऑल्सो गिव अ गुड मीनिंग टू योर आंसर, ठीक है. तो ऐसे करके वी कैन राइट अ गुड अमाउंट ऑफ 3 पेज कंटेंट. एंड इनफैक्ट आपका काफी कंटेंट जो है वो कॉमन सेंस वाली चीजों से भी कनेक्ट होगा. आर्किटेक्चर में भी आ रहा है और माइथोलॉजी में भी आ रहा है, ठीक है. So that is how I think, though this question was hard, but अगर आप common sense के through अगर थोड़ा सा सोचो, this question actually becomes very interesting, ठीक है. Next, we've got the question on ocean currents, I think, and the role of fishing industry with respect to it. I think बहुत ही common theme है, multiple times. I think इस साल के भी FLT में थे हमारे, last year की भी FLT में थी. I think this theme is so common that throughout our FLTs also it's covered, and even previous year में भी 2-3 बार आया हुआ है. ठीक है, तो ocean current is something, ये आपको पता होना चाहिए, आपका मैप भी प्रिपेयर्ड होना चाहिए. ठीक है, फिशिंग इंडस्ट्री में क्या रोल है उसका, आई थिंक दिस इज अ वेरी वेरी इजी क्वेश्चन. आई थिंक ज्योग्राफी वाला, जैसे मैंने बोला ना, इस साल का बहुत ही इजी क्वेश्चंस आए थे, डायरेक्ट एनसीईआरटी से पिकअप हो रहे. ठीक है, अगेन रबर प्रोड्यूसिंग कंट्रीज, सी लोकेशन वाला अगर आप नोटिस करोगे, लोकेशन वाले पैटर्न क्वेश्चंस आ रहे हैं काफी टाइम से, जैसे लास्ट ईयर आयरन एंड स्टील आया हुआ है, एंड लोकेशन वाले में भी काफी थीम्स कॉमन है. जैसे अगर मैं कॉमन थीम्स की बात करूं, आयरन एंड स्टील इंडस्ट्री, कोल इंडस्ट्री, आपका एग्रीकल्चर में कॉटन, जूट. ठीक है, रबर पहले पूछा गया है, ठीक है, बट इस बार ही पहली बार आया है. पेट्रोकेमिकल इंडस्ट्री, ठीक है, पेट्रोल रिलेटेड, रिफाइनिंग रिलेटेड इंडस्ट्रीज, ठीक है, वो. तो ये जो काफी थीम्स है, ये बहुत ही कॉमन थीम्स रही है. ठीक है, ये 2-3 बार पूछी गई है पेपर में, एंड रिपीटिंग पैटर्न्स है. तो लोकेशन वाला यूजुअली 1 या 2 क्वेश्चन आ ही जाते हैं, तो इस सेक्शन को मत स्किप आउट करना. ठीक है, इस सेक्शन के लिए जैसे एनसीईआरटीज में बात कर रही हूँ, थोड़ा सा एनसीईआरटीज में ये कंटेंट कम मिलेगा, तो यू विल हैव टू गूगल आउट अ बिट टॉपिक्स फॉर दिस. इसके प्रॉपर एक नोट्स बना लो, अभी आपके पास टाइम है, अभी आप नीड्स की यू प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर मीन्स राइट नाउ. सो एक थोड़ा सा मेक अ सेपरेट नोट्स फॉर दिस लोकेशन ऑफ इंडस्ट्री वाला सेक्शन, so that again that is covered properly, because NCERTs में I think not very properly covered. ठीक है, तो some major themes, इसका एक proper notes बनाओ and cover it out. ठीक है, because otherwise what you will do is you will end up writing the same points. आप labor लिख दोगे, आप raw material intensive लिख दोगे, you'll write about water, power, common themes that you'll keep on repeating. ठीक है, कुछ इंडस्ट्री की something is specific. ठीक है, अब रबर इंडस्ट्री है तो ऑब्वियसली वाटर बिकम्स अ वेरी बिग डील. अब इसमें भी जैसे अगर इंडिया, अगेन यू कैन डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन वाले क्वेश्चंस में भी यू कैन ड्रॉ मैप. ठीक है, यू कैन ड्रॉ द मैप ऑफ इंडिया एंड यू कैन शो इन विच रीजन्स रबर इज प्रोड्यूस, जैसे. ठीक है, सो दैट इज ऑल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट. ठीक है, विशाखा इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट रबर वाज ऑल्सो इन बजट this year, right? But again, Vishaka, right now making this connection is easier, but when you're actually studying for budget, making that connection is very difficult. So I would actually ask you to go through this section a bit extensively. मतलब cover out a lot of different sections, fishery से लेके मतलब agriculture हो गया, manufacturing हो गई, all these location of industries, cover them properly. ठीक है, and you can go through your previous year questions also. ठीक है, उसमें भी you will find good amount of content. ठीक है, so again this is important. Next question, again it can be a bit tricky or it might not be, because again straits and isthmus is something that you go through in your current affairs also. जैसे straits, Malacca straits है, ये सब आपकी I think current affairs में it's constantly talked about, because they also have a lot of strategic importance. ठीक है, so that kind of. Hello,
ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, Aman.
Ma'am, I have a question कि मैम NCERT से मैम करंट को लिंक करके भी क्वेश्चन को लिख सकते हैं ना?
Yes, you can do that.
मैम किस तरीके से फॉर्मेट, मतलब कुछ बता सकते हैं, सब हेडिंग्स वगैरह कैसे, मतलब
लाइक आप कैसे पूछना चाह रहे हो, आप एग्जांपल दो मुझे, कैसे एनसीईआरटी. अब जैसे ये स्ट्रेट्स वाला एक क्वेश्चन है, आप इसको करंट अफेयर से इफ यू ट्राइंग टू कनेक्ट, आप मलाका स्ट्रेट की बात करो, आप उसकी इंपॉर्टेंस बात करो, आप इथमस की बात कर रहे हो तो जो पनामा इथमस है वो भी कॉन्टिन्यूसली न्यूज में रहता है. ठीक है, आपका स्विस इथमस है, दैट इज ऑल्सो समथिंग दैट इज कंटिन्यूसली इन न्यूज. ठीक है, तो you can actually list down these set of isthmus, you can list down these set of straits and bring it in your answer actually. ठीक है, and again see guys, इसमें ज्योग्राफी में एक तो पोर्शन रहेगा आपका करंट अफेयर्स वाला, ठीक है, एक पोर्शन रहेगा आप प्रॉपर मैप्स भी बना दो इसमें ना, आप मुझे स्ट्रेट की डेफिनेशन दो, व्हाट इज इट, ठीक है, एंड यू कैन गिव मी सम लिस्ट ऑफ एग्जांपल्स, क्या स्ट्रेट्स हैं, ठीक है, विच हाउ दे आर इंपॉर्टेंट चोक पॉइंट्स, ठीक है, वो वगैरह मेंशन कर दो, मैप ड्रॉ कर दो, एंड देन यू टॉक अबाउट देयर सिग्निफिकेंस विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड, ठीक है, देन यू शिफ्ट टू इथेमिस, ड्रॉ द डायग्राम ऑफ इथेमिस, आप मेजर रीजन्स बता दो कहाँ पर है, गिव मी सम एग्जांपल ऑन द मैप, and then you talk about their significance with respect to international trade. Okay, so this major division in your answer is again very important. Again, a static question, but you can link it to a lot of current affair things that are happening here. Okay, guys, troposphere वाला question again very मतलब बहुत ही ज्यादा basic है. I think अगर आप पूरा you go through the whole geography, I don't think except for that color coding वाला, there's no question that is not actually linked to your NCRT. So geography this year was asked from a very basic course section. ठीक है, आपकी NCRT से पिकअप किया गया था, rather last few years में फिर भी you have a lot of current affairs question, like we've had question on ki the stubble burning wala, that question had come in the introduction in your geography question, ठीक है, I think 15 में आया था वो, ठीक है, so a lot of current affair based schemes are also question asked, ठीक है, तो वो तो है ही, बट इस साल का पेपर बाय चांस कोर रीजन कोर सेक्शन पे बहुत ज्यादा फोकस था, तो मेक श्योर नेक्स्ट ईयर के लिए somebody is asking, Abhimanyu is asking whether it will be difficult or not. See, again, it depends, Abhimanyu. The strategy that you have to chalk out for next year is, number one, core section should be your strength. If there are any questions from core section that is coming, you should be able to attempt them. Okay. Next portion is again the importance with respect to some current affair events. Okay, some current affair events like the pollution that had happened in the metro cities. Then there was this question on it. Then there was this question related to stubble burning. Okay, then there was this question related to say climate change. Sometimes that question also comes in here. Groundwater related. So these kind of questions also do come, right? So again, have two fold strategy here. Number one, go through your basic sections. आप अपना NCRTs वगैरह properly revise करो. Second, previous year के साथ practice करो. जितने major themes आपकी current affairs में आ रही है, and जो अभी की themes है, वो आप mocks के साथ cover कर सकते हो. ठीक है? तो आपका past और present और जो static है, तीनों इसके साथ cover up हो जाएगा. ठीक है? अब last 3 जो questions है, again they are from your society related questions. थोड़े से again I think I would call them a bit tricky questions, क्योंकि आप somebody is asking, Sumit is asking, when do we start with mocks? You can start with mocks right now, Sumit, because see again, guys, I told you abhi September hai, so October, November, December, January, Feb, 5 months are left for your writing of answers and practicing them. I think because after prelims, you are not something that you're learning with them. Okay, you're more or less practicing them. Abhi, if you join the mocks, you'll be able to learn with the process. You'll be able to change the way you make your notes. You'll be able to bring out, see, you went through all the questions. You know what a value addition is important. So maybe when you start preparing for your main section, you start focusing upon what all the important areas are and start changing your notes as per that. Right? So that wala preparation is something that will also help you out in your mains preparation. So I think start with your mains preparation as soon as possible. Guys, I'm sharing a link with you. You can register on this link. And if you want to inquire about our mains program, you will be considered in the top priority section and our team will connect with you. So who all of you guys do connect on this particular link, do register on this link, so that at least you can get idea about our mains test series as well. And you'll be given the priority section, and you can also ask for discounts on this particular link when you register here. Next, let's talk about question number 18. Now, this question is also a bit tricky. Can you tell me what do you mean by the salience of sect in caste, region, and religion? Can you subdivide and show me you know, how this particular section is relevant in caste, region, and religion, and your region. Come on, guys, try it out.
Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, maybe.
Yes, Aman. Can you please write in the message box also?
Yes, ma'am.
So that yeah, I can go. Otherwise, everybody, if they start talking on mic, it will become a chaos here. Right. Islam, Shia, Sunni. Yes, Shudras. Right. What about region? Caste, Jati, North, South Indian. Okay, that is okay. Good enough. Shwetambar, Digambar, good. Jainism also somebody is bringing in. Christianity also, right? So religion wise, a lot of you guys have actually divided into multiple. जैसे Hinduism में आप बात करो तो Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, ठीक है, वो आ गया. Buddhism में आपके श्वेतांबर, दिगंबर हो गए. फिर आपके बुद्धिज्म में you can divide into वो एक पुराने थेराविन्स जो कहते हैं, ठीक है, और आपका जो न्यू वाला है वो वाला सेक्शंस हो गया, महायान, ठीक है, बुद्धिज्म हो गया, जैनिज्म हो गया, आपका क्रिश्चियनिटी यहाँ पे प्रोटेस्टेंट्स वगैरह मेंशन किया है, ठीक है. तो अगेन दैट काइंड ऑफ डिविजन एक्चुअली यू कैन टॉक अबाउट, ठीक है. एंड रीजन वाइज ऑल्सो आप मतलब एक तो नॉर्थ इंडियन हो गया, एक तो साउथ इंडियन हो गया, ठीक है. बट अगेन आई थिंक दैट डिविजन आप थोड़ा स्टेट वाइज भी रख सकते हो, ठीक है. जैसे अगर आप स्टेट में भी बात करो तो बहुत वेरिएशंस आ जाते हैं, ठीक है. बिकॉज सी अगेन सेक्ट इज समथिंग यू कैन कंसिडर कि एक स्मॉल ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल हु हैव सम सर्टेन पॉलिटिकल बिलीव्स, ठीक है. तो आपके एक रीजन वाइज में भी लिंग्विस्टिक भी, हाँ, जैसे लिंग्विस्टिक यू मेंशनिंग, कल्चर वाइज डिफरेंसेस भी आ जाते हैं, ठीक है. कास्ट में तो जैसे आपने 3-4 डिविजन ये बता दिए, सब डिविजन. अगेन रीजन में भी आपके फ्रॉम रीजन टू रीजन सेक्ट माइट डिफर, ठीक है. आपका सम सेक्शन ऑफ द सोसाइटी, जैसे हाँ, आप राजस्थान में आप बात कर रहे हो, राजपूत हो गया, मारवाड़ीज हो गया, मेवा, सिंधीज ऑल्सो आर समवेयर प्रेजेंट, ठीक है. आपके जाट्स आर ऑल्सो प्रेजेंट इन राजस्थान. सो दैट काइंड ऑफ वेरिएशन ऑल्सो हैपन्स हियर, ठीक है. कर्नाटका में लिंग्यात, ठीक है, हाँ, वो रीजन वाइज भी डाल सकते हो आप इनफैक्ट इसको, ठीक है. तो अगेन when you're talking about what do you mean by the term salience? Salience का मतलब बताना क्या होता है इस बार ही, आई थिंक. अच्छा, एक और चीज है, sometimes when you have some difficult ideas which you cannot decipher in the question, do read the Hindi conversion of that particular question also. That will help you understand the question better, ठीक है. तो वो एक टेक्निक also you can apply here, ठीक है. अब जैसे यहाँ पे वो कह रहा है कि somebody is saying that Hindi becomes much more difficult. See, again, that depends upon person to person. Some people find it easier, ठीक है. Some people might find it difficult, but it does give you some good idea. जैसे अब यहाँ पे क्या कह रहा है, विशेषता का विवेचना कीजिए, ठीक है. तो अब अगेन यहाँ पे आपको मतलब उसकी इंपॉर्टेंस, मतलब अगर आपको एनालिसिस, अगेन एनालिसिस अगर टर्म आ रहा है तो आप सेक्ट्स के बारे में अगर बात कर रहे हो, कास्ट वाइज, रिलीजन वाइज या रीजन वाइज, एक उनका सिग्निफिकेंस भी आप बात कर सकते हो, साइड में आप उनके इश्यूज भी हाईलाइट कर सकते हो, ठीक है. तो अगर आपको यहाँ पे बात करना है तो 3 डिवीजन भी, आप एक कास्ट का डिवीजन रखो, उसमें दोनों सेक्शन कवर करो, एक रीजन का डिवीजन रखो. पहले तो बताओ कि कैसे रीजन डिवीजन हो सकता है, ठीक है. गिव मी दैट एग्जांपल, देन टॉक अबाउट बोथ द एस्पेक्ट्स. देन रिलीजन, आप मुझे एग्जांपल दो, बुद्धिज्म, जैनिज्म वगैरह, और दोनों सेक्शन कवर करो, ठीक है. एनालिसिस वाले सेक्शन में यूजुअली दोनों पोर्शन कवर होते हैं, तो आप उसकी प्रोमिनेंस भी बात कर सकते हो, आप उसकी इंपॉर्टेंस भी बात कर सकते हो, बट उसकी चैलेंजेस भी डालना इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ठीक है. सो दिस वाज अबाउट दैट सेक्शन. अच्छा, सेक्युलरिज्म अगेन अ वेरी कॉमन टॉपिक, बहुत बार आ चुका है यूपीएससी में. क्वेश्चन का पैटर्न डिफरेंट हो सकता है, ठीक है, बट अगेन दिस टाइम आई थिंक क्वेश्चन वाज नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट, क्योंकि आपको सेक्युलरिज्म के 3 मेजर एस्पेक्ट्स बात करने थे. एक आपको बात करनी थी टॉलरेंस के बारे में, एक एसिमिलेशन के बारे में, एक प्लूरलिज्म के बारे में. अब एसिमिलेशन का कंसेप्ट क्या होता है कि see, when as Hindu culture, I start taking say from some other culture, I like some features and I start incorporating that into my own culture, then that is called assimilation. Okay, so assimilation is what it is, bringing the features of different culture into your own cultures. Okay, and pluralism क्या होता है? Existence of many. It can be many ideas, it can be many ideologies. So these are multiple things that are there with respect to your secularism concept. ठीक है, अब again see, when you're talking about secularism, आप tolerance की बात कर सकते हो कि how we should have basic level of क्या बोलते हैं हमारे basic levels of you know acceptance of somebody's rituals. अगर आपका साइड में जैसे कोई टेम्पल है, तो अगर वहां पे कुछ रिचुअल हो रही है तो उसको एक्सेप्ट करना, मतलब उसके अगेंस्ट वायलेंस ना क्रिएट करना. ठीक है, दीज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स इज समथिंग दैट इज नेसेसरी. ठीक है, तो टॉलरेंस से फॉर हिंदुइज्म, फॉर द मुस्लिम कल्चर और फॉर क्रिश्चियन कल्चर, दिस इज ऑल इम्पोर्टेंट. ठीक है, तो सेकुलरिज्म का एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट टूल रहता है टॉलरेंस towards some others culture, towards some others rituals, towards some others ideology. ठीक है, assimilation का example देना मुझे somebody in the chat box. Assimilation कैसे होता है between various cultures? Try it out. एक बहुत ही common tribes का कैसे, अभिषेक? How is it? Festivals. Okay, tribes have also religion. Celebrating festivals of them, yes, that can work. Like Diwali is something that is celebrated throughout India, irrespective of the culture, caste feeling. Sanskritization. Sanskritization, I don't think it would come in assimilation here, Shikhar. Don't wear bangles, but Indians do. Okay, all right, good. अच्छा, what about the Indo-Saracenic architecture जो हमारा था? मतलब your whole architecture was actually influenced and clubbing of 2-3 cultures together. ठीक है, तो that is also an assimilation technique. मतलब वो भी आपकी culture के through represent हो रही है. ठीक है, तो वो भी एक good example है यहाँ पे. Couple of good examples mentioned here. Music, food. Yes, food is good example here. ठीक है, music, yes, Sufi culture, good. Clothing, again, what you can do here is assimilation. आप multiple areas से दिखा सकते हो. एक social life you can show here, एक cultural life you can show. Literature हो गया, जैसे language जब आप बात करते हो, उर्दू language, ठीक है, वो भी या हिंदुस्तानी language जो पहले होती थी. ठीक है, you can show this kind of culture together. ठीक है, अच्छा, pluralism is also something that is important. ठीक है, having multiple ideas. Again, pluralism, I think जो हमारा एक concept आता है जैनिज्म में कि having multiple meanings, having multiple ideas is something that is, I think, Jainism or Buddhism सब में it is very relevant. ठीक है, तो one sided ना होना, multiple angles होना, I think that is also a good part of secularism. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे आप debates, opinions and practices, हर चीज में you can bring in that angle. ठीक है, there's another Spanish, you can talk about that colonial culture also. ठीक है, because again, see, secularism, usually whenever we see secularism, we tend to, you know, move towards just 2 religions, and I don't think that is required here. Get as much variety in your answer as you can, and that will actually fetch you good marks. Okay, so again, this question would have required you to divide the sections into multiple areas. Next question here was actually talking about globalization and new technology in the world of scarce resources. अच्छा, अब globalization और new technology का relationship, can you talk about something here? ठीक है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे see, when you're talking about how do we efficiently reutilize your resources, we've globalization has provided good amount of opportunity. जैसे अगर हम MNC कल्चर की बात करें तो दैट इज ऑल्सो अ वेरी एफिशिएंट वे ऑफ यूजिंग योर रिसोर्सेज, बिकॉज एक ही जगह पे या MNC, सो एक ही जगह पे सब कुछ मैन्युफैक्चर हो रहा है, ठीक है, देयर इज मोर एफिशिएंट यूसेज ऑफ योर रिसोर्सेज, ठीक है, आपका मोबाइल बैंकिंग या आपका ये वाली जो चीजें हैं, they also allow you to work through limited resources, very mechanization of manufacturing जो हो गया है because of globalization, cryptocurrency, yeah, that is also good point here, ठीक है, education, energy, diplomacy, again guys you have to link it to resources also, ठीक है, आप जो भी पॉइंट यहाँ पे देना चाह रहे हो, जैसे अगर आप ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज एजुकेशन सेक्टर में भी आप बात कर रहे हो, तो यू हैव टू लिंक इट टू रिसोर्सेज इन द सेंस कि जैसे विलेजेस में वी हैव डेफिशिट ऑफ टीचर्स एंड एवरीथिंग, तो टेली मेडिसिन, टेली एजुकेशन, दैट एक्चुअली हेल्प्स यू टू यूटिलाइज दोज रिसोर्सेज विच आर फार बियॉन्ड एंड देन ब्रिंग इट इनटू वर्किंग, ठीक है, तो make sure whatever points you're writing here, try to link it with the argument that is set in this particular question, ठीक है, आप रिलेशनशिप बताओ बिटवीन ग्लोबलाइजेशन एंड न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी एंड रिसोर्सेज का, ठीक है, तो ये 3 मेजर पॉइंट्स है, ठीक है, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट व्हेन यू टॉकिंग अबाउट योर आंसर्स हियर, ठीक है, सो guys, this was the paper 1 here, and if you go through the paper, I think it was very easy. Thoda sa ab, what do we think the things that are required in this particular paper now is, for the future stake, if I talk about, number 1 is your theory portion is very important, ठीक है, your theory portion is very important. Make sure you cover your theory portion very very properly. Abhimanyu, I think it's 90 and I think it's 75 marks. You have to confirm it. I think earlier they were 99 marks, it had reduced to somewhere around 75 marks, ठीक है, again, see guys, number 1, static portion very very important. प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, मैंने आपको थीम्स अभी के अभी बता दी, सेकुलरिज्म आया हुआ है, ये रीजन एंड रिलीजन एंड कास्ट के बीच में जो डिफरेंसेस हैं, दिस इज समथिंग दैट इज देयर इन योर प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन आल्सो, ठीक है, आपका ट्रोपोस्फियर इज समथिंग दैट हैज बीन आस्क्ड इन प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन, ग्लोबलाइजेशन एज सच एज अ टॉपिक और थीम की मैं बात करूं, दिस इज वेरी रिपीटिंग इन द पेपर्स, ठीक है, इफ यू लुक एट सम अदर क्वेश्चंस आल्सो, यहाँ पे जैसे मैंने फैमिन्स वाली बात करी, तो अगेन एग्रीकल्चर रिलेटेड, तो ये भी पहले आया हुआ है, cyclones related question is something that is there in your previous year, and again multiple of these themes are actually covered in your FLTs also, ठीक है, तो आप अगर प्रीवियस ईयर भी नहीं कर पा रहे तो एटलीस्ट एक मॉक्स ज्वाइन करो, सो दैट आपकी प्रैक्टिस ये सब हैपेंस ऑन प्रोसेस, ठीक है, आपका इन प्रोसेस चलता रहे, ठीक है, मेक श्योर दैट यू स्टार्ट preparing for means properly, don't wait for answer writing till the last portion, ठीक है, that will not fetch you marks. For the next 2 papers, let's make it a bit quicker, because I think we already have covered 1.5 hours with one paper discussion only. Shweta is saying, is Samachar Manthan answer writing? See, Samachar Manthan is good enough, but I think start practicing, because Samachar Manthan just covers your current affairs section. What about your static portions? Where are you revising that from? And moreover, Samachar Manthan is good on a weekly basis, like it's just 10 questions, but you have to prepare the 3-hour section also. Like 3-hour pattern of answer writing is also something that you have to start practicing. Okay, that is also very important. When should we switch to prelims? Again, depending upon your preparation mode, somewhere around mid-March is good enough. Note making strategy for prelims. Gautam, we're talking about mains abhi, not prelims. So let's focus upon mains preparation right now. Sources for society, I think again, number 1, make sure you go through the NCERTs, okay? The Indian society and the other one, okay? These NCERTs is very important. Second thing is practice as many previous year question papers as you can, okay? Write as many answers, mocks you can, because then you'll be revising the themes. Go through the syllabus, make sure every portion that is mentioned in the syllabus, you have certain, say 250 marks, 250 words related portion prepared with you. Like if there's a portion on, say, secularism, you can cover it through previous years and mocks, or also you can Google it out and make some of your specific notes. Okay, so NCRTs plus your practicing of answer writing. I think these are two portions enough for your GS society portion. Let's quickly run through the Gs2 paper here. Now again, see, I'll not go into too much of details with respect to answer writing because I think that it will be taking 1.5 hours again. So we went through in detail about the paper 1. Okay, but in the paper 2, again, I'll try and highlight here कि कितने सारे portions were actually there from your current affairs, from your the static portion and the previous year. Okay, this is the first question. If I look at, it's talking about the environmental laws and its problem. Okay, now again, this question might be a bit tricky because you had to specifically mention the case laws, but again, you can mention some of them. जैसे आप NGT के 2-3 cases की बात कर सकते हो, आप गंगा related जो tannery case हुआ था, आप उसकी बात कर सकते हो. ठीक है, आप MC मेहता का जो case है, इसमें वो mention कर सकते हो. ये काफी popular cases है. ठीक है, तो वो आप इसमें बात कर सकते हो. तो अगेन जब आप एनवायरमेंटल प्रॉब्लम्स की यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हो, तो ये एक थोड़ा सा आई थिंक प्रीवियस ईयर से थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट थीम क्वेश्चन आया था. बट अगेन दिस इज अ वेरी नाइस क्वेश्चन. आप यहाँ पे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एलिमेंट्स की बात करो, DPSPs डालो इनिशियली. ठीक है, उसके बाद आप केस लॉज मेंशन करो और आप मेंशन करो कैसे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल एलिमेंट्स इसके साथ क्रिएट किए गए हैं. ठीक है, वेरियस लॉज विच हैव बीन मेड. आप इसमें एयर, वाटर, ये सारे लॉज का मेंशन कर सकते हो आप. ठीक है, बायोडाइवर्सिटी का कैसे प्रोटेक्शन है, बायोडाइवर्सिटी एक्ट की आप यहाँ पे बात कर सकते हो. ठीक है, तो वेरियस ऑफ दीज थिंग्स आल्सो यू कैन मेंशन इन दिस पर्टिकुलर आंसर. राइट टू मूवमेंट एंड रेजिडेंस, आपका जो CAA वाला कंसेप्ट था वो इतना न्यूज में था फॉर लास्ट लाइक अगर हम 4-5 years का अगर हम देखें तो वो वाला एक जो कंटेंट है, तो वो राइट टू मूवमेंट एंड रेजिडेंस. ठीक है, वो वाला एक कंटेंट उससे कवर करता है. इनर लाइन परमिट, ठीक है, that is something that has been continuously covered in your current affairs. ठीक है, तो this question is both from the static and current also. ठीक है, आप इनर लाइन परमिट्स की बात करो एंड आप फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर्टिकल 19 की भी यहाँ पे बात करो. ठीक है, both the sections will actually be covered in this particular section. नेक्स्ट है डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन. अब डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ पावर इतना कॉमन स्टैटिक पोर्शन है. अगेन ये हमारी टेस्ट सीरीज में भी मल्टीपल टाइम्स कवर हुआ है एंड ऑल्सो आपकी प्रीवियस ईयर में भी मल्टीपल टाइम्स कवर हुआ है. सो आई थिंक डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन इज समथिंग नॉट वेरी हार्ड. यू कैन टॉक अबाउट पंचायत, यू कैन टॉक अबाउट अर्बन गवर्नेंस, बोथ द सेक्शंस कैन एक्चुअली बी कवर्ड हियर. ठीक है, अब नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन है वाइस प्रेसिडेंट. ये किस लिए आया था? अगेन करंट अफेयर्स. ठीक है, आपके वाइस प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शंस होने वाले हैं. इनफैक्ट प्रेसिडेंट वाला भी क्वेश्चन आया है. यू लुक एट दिस क्वेश्चन हियर. आपका क्वेश्चन नंबर कौन सा है? आई थिंक ये रहा क्वेश्चन नंबर, वेयर इज इट? या 14. सी, critically examine the procedure by which President of India and France are elected. Again, presidential elections हुए. ठीक है, तो आपका ये वाला पोर्शन भी कवर हुआ है. इनफैक्ट हमने अपने FLT में भी क्वेश्चन डाला था बिकॉज इतना कॉमन सेंस थीम था कि अगर प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शंस हो रहे हैं, वाइस प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शंस हो रहे हैं, तो ये थीम ऑटोमेटिकली इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाती है. शॉफनिक, यू जस्ट हैव टू रजिस्टर ऑन दिस लिंक दैट आई एम सेंडिंग हियर. ठीक है, आप इस लिंक पे रजिस्टर करो एंड यू विल गेट अ कॉल विद रिस्पेक्ट टू द सीरीज. ठीक है, यस, इवन द फ्रेंच इलेक्शंस वर देयर इन 2022. ठीक है, अब देखो प्रेसिडेंशियल है तो उसके मल्टीपल एलिमेंट्स है. एक तो उसका रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन, आपको ये सब पता होना चाहिए. ठीक है, उसकी वीटो पावर वगैरह ये सब इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है. अब इलेक्शन है तो उसका प्रोसेस में आप कंपैरिजन, जैसे हमारी जो टेस्ट सीरीज में था, हमने कंपैरिजन ड्रॉ किया था US प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शंस एंड इंडियन प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शन, क्योंकि यूजुअली लास्ट 2-3 ईयर से US आ रहा था, बट इस साल आपके इसमें फ्रांस आ गया. तो बट स्टिल लाइक वी वर समवेयर अराउंड द थीम ऑफ द क्वेश्चन. बट अगेन दिस काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन ऐसे आपको ना थोड़ा कैच करना पड़ता है थीम से. ठीक है, तो प्रेसिडेंशियल एंड वाइस प्रेसिडेंशियल अगर आपने नहीं प्रिपेयर किया है, ठीक है, देन इट्स काइंड ऑफ अ डिजास्टर. ठीक है, Amit is saying, can we expect British monarch next year? A bit difficult, Amit, because this is like death abhi hua hai. Like I think you're referring to that portion only, and we have our mains next year. तो थोड़ा सा करंट अफेयर्स ये उस टाइम तक पुराना हो जाएगा, ठीक है। तो आई थिंक दैट इज इम्पोर्टेंट इन एनी केस, बट यू हैव टू काइंड ऑफ कीप द ट्रैक विद रिस्पेक्ट टू थोड़ा सा रिसेंट वाला करंट अफेयर्स ऑल्सो, ठीक है। तो वाइस प्रेसिडेंशियल, अच्छा, नेशनल कमीशन फॉर बैकवर्ड क्लासेस, ये तो करंट अफेयर्स में ही चल रहा था। लाइक ये जो स्टैट्यूटरी बॉडी से इसको कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी किया है, आई थिंक दिस इज द अमेंडमेंट दैट हैपेंड, आई थिंक 17-18 के अराउंड दैट हैपेंड। आई थिंक 17-18 में करंट अफेयर्स में बहुत ज्यादा था, ठीक है। तो दैट ईयर ऑल्सो इट वॉज एक्सपेक्टेड कि ये मेंस में आएगा क्वेश्चन, ठीक है, एंड इससे रिलेटेड आया था, ठीक है। तो या तो आप इसको प्रीवियस ईयर के थ्रू कवर करो, ठीक है, हमारी मेंस टेस्ट सीरीज में था उसके थ्रू कवर करो, या ये करंट अफेयर एज अ बॉडी आपका स्टैटिक पोर्शन में भी जाता है, ठीक है। अब स्टैटिक पोर्शन में देखो मल्टीपल कमीशंस होते हैं, आपका SC ST भी होगा, आपका बैकवर्ड क्लासेस भी होगा, बहुत सारे होंगे, ठीक है। तो उसमें से वन पिकअप करना बहुत मुश्किल चला जाता है, तो उसके लिए आप प्रीवियस ईयर पे थोड़ा सा ध्यान रखो, ठीक है, दैट विल हेल्प यू, एंड करंट अफेयर्स, ठीक है। ये दो पोर्शन में जो जो चीजें आ रही है उसमें थोड़ा सा ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस दो, एंड देन कवर इट आउट, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज गति शक्ति योजना। अगेन वन ऑफ द क्वेश्चन वी हैड प्रिडिक्टेड कि ये तो इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थीम दैट नीड्स टू बी कवर्ड, बट द प्रॉब्लम हियर वाज एक्चुअली वी वर लिंकिंग दिस पर्टिकुलर थीम इन पेपर 3. We were linking ki economics related this question would come, but again UPSC is UPSC, so they converted this complete question into your polity related question, okay. And now you had to actually talk about how the government and the private sector would together work with respect to infrastructure development in India, okay. तो वहां पे PPP partnership वाला जो culture है, you had to talk about this, and you had to talk about the kind of the structure where the good governance structure where the government, the private sector, and even the public sometimes, right? Remember Modi ji had said wo 4P wala concept, even the public sometimes they have to be also connected with it, okay. So again gati shakti, it was there in your budget, it was actually everywhere. If you're missing this topic, then I think your current affairs is not properly done at all, okay. Next was on rights to persons, right of persons with disability act. Again, see, act related question usually हमारे paper 2 में रहते हैं, ठीक है. Sometimes it's either I think last year हमारा National Food Security Act वाला आया था, ठीक है. फिर हमारा एक बार Arbitration Act पे आया हुआ है. So acts related question usually आते हैं, ठीक है. It's not something new. But again this time जो question आए थे like आपका राइट टू डिसेबिलिटी एंड एक आई थिंक यहाँ पे राइट टू एजुकेशन वाला क्वेश्चन है, वेयर इज इट, ये रहा, क्वेश्चन नंबर 18, द राइट ऑफ द चिल्ड्रन टू फ्री एंड कंपल्सरी एजुकेशन, ठीक है. बोथ ऑफ देम एक्चुअली क्वेश्चन हमारे इजी थे, लाइक आपको प्रॉपरली एक्ट्स का वो नहीं चाहिए, डिस्क्रिप्शन नहीं चाहिए कि व्हाट ऑल थिंग्स आर देयर इन द एक्ट्स, ठीक है. यू कैन एक्चुअली राइट एंड कनेक्ट इट विद सम जेनरिक कंटेंट यहाँ पे, ठीक है. अब यहाँ पे आपको देखो sensitization of government functionaries, and you have to talk about the sensitization of citizens, ठीक है. So you can bring in other elements also that the government is talking about. You can talk about accessibility index, ठीक है. You can talk about the Accessible India campaign. So whatever things that the government is doing, ठीक है, वो वाली चीज also you can connect here. So again the idea here is कि act तो दिया है, बट एज सच आपको एक्ट के बारे में यहाँ पे नहीं बात करना है, ठीक है. यू हैव टू टॉक अबाउट कि व्हाट इश्यूज दैट द yes the problem with their implementation. अभिमन्यु, आपको बताना है कि what issues they are facing right now, ठीक है. आपका डिस्क्रिमिनेशन है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिलेटेड है, आपका what all other things, आपका बेसिक नीड्स रिलेटेड जैसे टॉयलेट्स, ये सारी चीजें हो गई, इन सब से रिलेटेड, ठीक है. ये सारे इश्यूज इज समथिंग दैट वी नीड टू टेक केयर. जो पॉलिसीज है जैसे एक्सेसिबल इंडिया है या एक्सेसिबल इंडेक्स वगैरह है, इन सब का प्रॉपर आपका पॉलिसीज का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ना होना इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग हियर, ठीक है. सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स यू हैड टू हाईलाइट हियर. नेक्स्ट इज योर DBT ट्रांसफर स्कीम. अगेन a very easy question, I wouldn't call it a very difficult question, ठीक है. बेसिकली आपको इसके पॉजिटिव एंड नेगेटिव लाइक काइंड ऑफ जब ये प्रोग्रेसिव स्टेप की बात कर रहा है और ये लिमिटेशन, तो काइंड ऑफ चैलेंजेस एंड पॉजिटिव यू हैड टू टॉक अबाउट बोथ ऑफ देम, ठीक है। सो नॉट अ डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन टू टैकल। अच्छा, आपके ये जो आईआर के क्वेश्चन थे, एक आया था आपका श्रीलंका के ऊपर, एक आया था आपका बिमसैट के ऊपर, लास्ट के दो क्वेश्चन थे, एक आया था I2U2 के ऊपर और एक आया था क्लीन एनर्जी के ऊपर। 4 क्वेश्चन थे, इसमें से 3 क्वेश्चन वी हैड एक्चुअली प्रिडिक्टेड इन आवर एफएलटी सीरीज। श्रीलंका वाला अभी रिसेंट हुआ है, तो दैट वाज सपोज टू कम, वो तो आपको करना ही करना था। एंड ऑलवेज आईआर के क्वेश्चंस में इंडियाज रोल या इंडियाज रिलेशन विद रिस्पेक्ट टू दैट पर्टिकुलर प्रॉब्लम इज हाईलाइट। तो कोई भी आप आईआर का टॉपिक, जैसे अगर आपने यूक्रेन भी प्रिपेयर किया होता, तो उसमें इंडियाज रोल आइडेंटिफाई करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, ठीक है, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। तो श्रीलंका वाला क्वेश्चन वाज देयर इन आवर टेस्ट सीरीज। विमसेट, कैन समबडी से ये किस लिए आया था? आई थिंक दिस वाज आल्सो देयर इन योर करंट अफेयर्स। कैन समबडी टेल मी कि ये क्वेश्चन किस लिए आया है? कम ऑन गाइस, हाईलाइट इट। No, not the exact expansion, Sumit. It was there in current affairs actually, and that is why this question had come. That is why we were able to get this question in our test series, क्योंकि ये काफी important, इसके 25 years हो गए हैं। That is why it was there in आपका current affairs में it was there because recently it actually completed 25 years, ठीक है, आपका 1997 बैंकॉक डिक्लेरेशन से लेके अभी तक का। तो दैट इज व्हाई दिस वाज देयर इन करंट अफेयर्स, ठीक है। तो इसीलिए मिमसैट वाज समथिंग दैट इवन वी प्रेडिक्टेड आएगा। उसका कंपैरिजन विद सार्क इज आल्सो समथिंग दैट इज वेरी मच अंडरस्टूड, क्योंकि वी हैव हैड अ लॉट ऑफ आर्टिकल्स वेयर यू कंपेयर मिमसैट विद सार्क। यूजुअली हम ऐसे कहते हैं ना कि BIMSET is SARC minus Pakistan. So that is one of the issue that you can highlight with respect to SARC. बट हमारा यहाँ पे मल्टीपल एंगल्स है, जैसे बिमसैट आपका एक गुड एक्सपेंशन है टू द एशियन रीजन, ठीक है, एंड अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंट वर्किंग सिनेरियोज, जैसे आपका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिलेटेड, आपका ट्राइलेटरल वो जो बनाया है, ट्राइलेटरल हाईवे जो बनाया है, ठीक है, BBIN जो उसके अंदर काम कर रहा है, ठीक है। तो मल्टीपल सिनेरियोज दैट एक्चुअली कैन वर्क हियर, ठीक है। तो ये सारी चीजें यहाँ पे मेंशन करना अगेन बिकम्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड अगेन द थीम ऑफ दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन वाज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज आपका रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट 1951। ये जो एक्ट है, आप प्रीवियस 2013 से ही देखो, आई थिंक 2-3 बार तो ये इजिली आया हुआ है क्वेश्चन इस पे, ठीक है। तो दिस एक्ट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, हर 2-3 साल में इसके ऊपर क्वेश्चन आ ही जाता है। एंड यूजुअली डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन क्या रहते हैं मेंबर्स की, ठीक है, उस पे आता है। जैसे यहाँ पे इसने बता दिया कि डिस्प्यूट जो होते हैं वो कैसे हैंडल होते हैं, तो हाई कोर्ट वगैरह का यू कुड हैव मेंशन्ड हियर, ठीक है। तो बेसिकली इन थीम्स के अराउंड ही इसका क्वेश्चन आता है, एंड इसके भी अगेन आप एक प्रॉपर नोट्स बना लो, ठीक है, रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ एक्ट के, क्योंकि ये जो एक्ट है प्रीवियस ईयर के हिसाब से इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। क्यों डिस्क्वालीफाई होता है एमएलएज या आपका मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, आपका करप्शन रिलेटेड जो चार्जेस है, ये सारे आप बात कर सकते हो, ठीक है। आपका प्रोसेस कैसे होता है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू टैकलिंग दैट डिस्क्वालिफिकेशन, ठीक है। ऑल दीज थीम्स आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। तो ये जो टॉपिक है ना, रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ पीपल्स एक्ट, ये आप हाईलाइट कर लो, ये आपको पॉलिटी में कवर करना ही करना है। थोड़ा सा कम चांस है क्योंकि इस साल आ गया तो वो नेक्स्ट ईयर भी रिपीट हो, उसमें थोड़ा सा कम चांस है, ठीक है। बट स्टिल दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थीम इफ यू आर प्लानिंग टू कवर इन फ्यूचर, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट अगेन आपका ऑर्डिनेंसेस एंड गवर्नर। अगेन गाइस, गवर्नर रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन भी आप प्रीवियस ईयर में देखो, मल्टीपल टाइम्स कवर हुआ है। कभी रिसेंटली तो ये जो आपका LG और गवर्नर वाला जो चीज है, दैट हैज बीन मल्टीपल टाइम्स। जैसे आई थिंक 18 में क्वेश्चन आया था, 16 में क्वेश्चन आया था, ये जो LG और गवर्नर वाला टसल चल रहा था उसके ऊपर ये क्वेश्चंस आए हुए हैं। गवर्नर रिलेटेड जनरल क्वेश्चंस बहुत आए हुए हैं, ठीक है। उसकी पावर्स, जैसे यहाँ पे अब ऑर्डिनेंस रिलेटेड पावर्स की बात कर रहे हैं, तो लेजिस्लेटिव पावर इज समथिंग दैट दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट। तो आप बिल्स के रिलेटेड आप बात कर सकते थे, ठीक है। आप ऑर्डिनेंस अगर प्रोमलगेट करें तो उसकी स्पेसिफिक कंडीशंस क्या होती है, आप वो बात कर सकते थे, ठीक है। ये डिफेक्शन वाला जो यहाँ पे लिखा है, मास डिफेक्शन एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स, ठीक है, ये वाला एक सिनेरियो यू कुड हैव डिस्कस्ड हियर अगेन, ठीक है। सो दिस क्वेश्चन अगेन आई वुड पुट इट इन easier portion because again ये वाला theme has been there in your previous year question papers a lot, ठीक है। So DC Vadva case, right? You can mention DC Vadva case. You can mention the recent Krishna Kumar case also. You can mention the that case also. That what do you say? RC Cooper case also. ठीक है, तो ये 3-4 cases also you can mention with respect to ordinance system also. ठीक है, आपका next question is interesting. अच्छा, इस question में you had to keep one thing in mind here. That number one, you had to talk about national political parties in India. How do they favor centralization? And then regional political parties, why do they support state autonomy? So you had to talk one side in their argument, right? You had to highlight one side talking in their argument. Then you also had to talk about how political national parties, they also support state autonomy. ठीक है, in the sense कि वो state related जो policies है उनको भी support करते हैं, and at the same place कैसे state can also support the centralization. जैसे GST वगैरह में the state and the center came together and started talking about how do we bring that issue together. ठीक है, तो अल्टीमेटली आपको दोनों साइड के आर्ग्यूमेंट देनी है, एंड लास्ट में जो कंक्लूजन जा रहा है वो आपको कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म की तरफ हाईलाइट करना है, ठीक है। So that is, I think, one important idea that you had to kept in this particular question. Last में cooperative federalism ज्यादा से ज्यादा डालना है तो competitive federalism वाला concept, ठीक है। These two ideas. Again, next question, model code of conduct has been asked in previous year papers. आपका prelims में भी आया in fact ये question, ठीक है। So this theme is again important. I think more or less आपका इसके अलावा जैसे वेलफेयरिज्म क्वेश्चन अगर हम बात करें, हाउ डू वी टैकल इन्फ्लेशन एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट, ठीक है, दैट इज आल्सो समथिंग इजियर दैट यू कैन टैकल. नेक्स्ट इज अबाउट योर डोनर कंपनीज, ठीक है, इसमें भी आपको 2-3 आइडियाज कंसेप्ट कवर करने हैं. आपको बताना है डोनर एजेंसीज का क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है, ठीक है. सेकेंड थिंग इज कैसे कम्युनिटी पार्टिसिपेशन इज ऑल्सो इम्पॉर्टेंट, ठीक है. एंड देन यू हैव टू लिंक कि कैसे अगर डोनर एजेंसीज, जैसे आप ये बता दो उनका फाइनेंस रिलेटेड मिसयूज जो हो रहा है, ठीक है, आपका मनी कहाँ पे प्रॉपरली सेग्रीगेट नहीं हो रहा है, रेगुलेशन नहीं हो रहा है, ठीक है, ये सारे इश्यूज यू कैन टॉक अबाउट. फीमा, हाँ, तो इन सब का यू कैन टॉक अबाउट कि उनसे रिलेटेड क्या इश्यूज है. बट अल्टीमेटली सी डोनर एजेंसीज या बिगर ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस या एनजीओस अगर कम्युनिटी के साथ अगर दे आर वर्किंग टुगेदर, ठीक है, तो आई थिंक दैट कैन ऑल्सो गिव अ गुड रिजल्ट आउट देयर, ठीक है. तो लास्ट में आपको यही हाईलाइट करना है कि कैसे एक complete model where the community participation as well as the donor agencies can work together, ठीक है. And in fact a lot of different good funding companies, जैसे अगर हम रेड प्लस इनिशिएटिव की अगर हम बात करें, ठीक है, तो these kind of international initiatives are actually funding in fact some local initiatives also, ठीक है. जैसे कैसे फॉरेस्ट का रीग्रोथ करना है, they're actually bringing some community related participation and supporting those particular programs. So you can actually highlight these kind of things कि ultimately see आपका जो shift हो रहा है that is actually shifting towards how we can get more and more of donor agencies working with the community people, ठीक है. That is also very important. Last we अच्छा I2 U2 again something that was covered in your current affairs, directly question from your current affairs. Again this is very important, ठीक है. ये वाला question I think अभी भी current affairs में चल रहा है. next year prelims के लिए भी I think this would be important, so take note of that, ठीक है. current affairs was something that was constantly asked in this particular paper. And last question is your clean energy is the order of the day, ठीक है. अब again environment related question, ठीक है. Abhimanyu is saying that Russia was upset about India joining it. Yes, but I don't think you have to mention that in your paper, ठीक है. वो पॉलिटिकल वाला जो टेक है उसको साइड में रखो. हैंडल दिस क्वेश्चन वेरी प्रोफेशनली. आप इसका ये बताओ कि इंडिया की strategic importance with respect to I2 U2 क्या रहेगी, ठीक है, talk about that portions, talk about the challenges in the region, ठीक है. Next is Sumit, can we get model answers? The document we'll work upon and we'll release the complete document, ठीक है. So that is something that is in process. You can keep attuned to our website to get further information upon the complete model answers for these particular tests, ठीक है. Next, let's quickly wrap through the paper 3 also, because I know it's getting very late for you guys also. Because see, these 3 papers are very comprehensive. We'll have a separate section for GS4, because again, like I said, I'm a faculty of GS4 also in Civils Delhi. So that is like my niche area where I have command over also. So we'll take a separate section on that particular section, okay? And we'll try to wrap up that portion also as soon as possible, okay? Yes, Sumit, go ahead, ask your question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, Sumit.
I'm in questions like, do you agree? Your statements on that.
Ha, do you agree? Yeah, your voice is breaking a bit in between.
Yes, ma'am. Do you agree that जो questions होते हैं उसमें conclusions में we have to straight away write that we agree or not, ऐसा कुछ करना होता है क्या?
नहीं, straight away नहीं, you don't have to write. आप पहले थोड़ा discussion, आप argument को build up कर सकते हो पहले. You can build up the argument. You can talk about कि जैसे if say they're talking about bringing certain scheme into practice, ठीक है, then you can talk about the positives of that scheme, the challenges of the scheme, then give your take कि इसको लाना चाहिए नहीं लाना चाहिए, and then you can talk about some reforms that can be brought about with respect to that, say, policy or scheme.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
ठीक है. Next was your paper 3. Again, guys, in paper 3 also we had a lot of themes that were covered from your previous year. ठीक है, अगर मैं directly first take बोलूं, PPP partnership is something that was covered even in our test series, and it is there in your previous year papers. ठीक है, inclusive growth as a topic is also something that is very common. ठीक है, अब आपका ये PPP वाला जो है, since it's not only the current affairs, I think आपका recently वो news भी आया था कि आपका जो रेलवे स्टेशन है, ठीक है, उनका रीडेवलपमेंट, जैसे मुंबई वाला एक स्टेशन की बात हुई थी एंड आपके दिल्ली वाले एक स्टेशन की बात हुई थी, ठीक है. दिस पर्टिकुलर न्यूज वाज देयर इन योर करंट अफेयर्स एंड दैट इज व्हाई दिस क्वेश्चन इज हियर, ठीक है. एंड आई थिंक वो जून की न्यूज में ही था. So you can see इधर पे मतलब जून जुलाई की न्यूज एंड इट्स डायरेक्टली कमिंग इन सितंबर, ठीक है. So this kind of news coverage is also important with respect to your means preparation, ठीक है. So again, PPP as such is important from your previous year themes also and current affairs related topics also. Second was inclusive growth. Again, inclusive growth, financial inclusion, जैसे last year's आपका जनधन, ऐसे topics have been coming there, ठीक है. तो I don't think this was a very difficult question, pretty easy to handle. Next 2 questions, PDS and food processing. I think multiple times we've covered this question. Food processing, so I think if you look at previous year question now, after 2-3 years or after every 2 years, they're asking question you on food processing industry. So this is also one area which is very important. In fact, I think in FLT, the second round of FLT. So in FLT 7 also, we have a question on food processing, right? So these kind of areas like PDS, food processing, PPP, and there are other themes also with respect to economic section, like upstream and downstream question, which had come here. Like if you look at the question number, this question, yeah, what are the main bottlenecks in upstream and downstream processes? ठीक है. Now this particular question actually came after a very huge amount of gap, ठीक है. Usually आप initial papers अगर आप previous year में देखोगे ना, ये upstream और downstream वाला, तो आप ये notice करना, ये questions I think आपके 13, या आपके 14-15 वाले एरा में बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रहे हैं, ठीक है। उसके बाद 2-3 साल से ये क्वेश्चंस थोड़े से स्किप आउट होने लग गए, बट अगेन वी गॉट दिस अपस्ट्रीम एंड डाउनस्ट्रीम पोर्शन विच इज अगेन कवर्ड इन दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन, ठीक है। तो दिस क्वेश्चन एग्रीकल्चर रिलेटेड, ठीक है। See again, if you're preparing for means, agriculture related theme is also very important. जैसे यहाँ पे integrated system है, ठीक है। इंटीग्रेटेड सिस्टम अगर आपको पता है, इट्स अगेन डूइंग एग्रीकल्चर विद पोल्ट्री पे भी फोकस करोगे आप साइड में फिशरी सेक्टर्स है, मतलब एक टोटल इंटीग्रेटेड स्ट्रक्चर रहेगा, ठीक है। अब अगेन इंटीग्रेटेड स्ट्रक्चर वाला जो ये क्वेश्चन है, ये इस साल तो नहीं बट हमारी लास्ट ईयर की टेस्ट सीरीज में था। व्हाई? बिकॉज दिस वाज अ लॉट इन न्यूज लास्ट ईयर, ठीक है। तो एक ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है कि व्हेन यू आर कवरिंग इकोनॉमिक्स, थोड़ा सा आप ब्रॉड पर्सपेक्टिव रखो, क्योंकि लास्ट ईयर जब आपने इकोनॉमिक्स का पोर्शन किया था तो वहां पे एक जीडीपी का क्वेश्चन आया था, वो 2015 में जो चेंजेस किए थे उसके रिस्पेक्ट में, ठीक है। तो इकोनॉमिक्स का जो करंट अफेयर्स रहता है ना, वो थोड़ा ब्रॉडर टोन में रखते हैं। तो अगेन विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इकोनॉमिक्स, इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि आप एक तो करंट अफेयर्स जो कवर कर रहे हो, एक तो एक साल का तो हो ही रहा है कवर, ठीक है। दूसरा इज व्हेन यू रीडिंग एनी न्यू टर्म्स, जैसे जो जीडीपी वाला है या इंटीग्रेटेड फार्मिंग है, ये कुछ टर्म्स शॉर्ट में आपके करंट अफेयर्स में आते रहते हैं, तो गूगल देम एंड रिवाइज थ्रू दैट कंसेप्ट, ठीक है। दैट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ठीक है, क्योंकि अगेन वो थोड़ा सा एक्सपैंड होता है और आपके पास पॉसिबल नहीं है कि आप एक साल से पुराना करंट अफेयर्स करो, बिकॉज दैट इज नॉट अ गुड स्ट्रैटेजी, ठीक है। सो दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट दैट यू हैव टू टेक केयर, ठीक है। नेक्स्ट अगर मैं और इकोनॉमिक्स के क्वेश्चन पूछूं तो आई थिंक मेजरली इजी थीम थे, इतना जैसे ज्यादा डिफिकल्ट थीम नहीं आया था आपका यहाँ पे ना। जैसे आप इसकी बात करो, इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ इन द रीसेंट पास्ट, ठीक है, लेबर प्रोडक्टिविटी के साथ इंक्रीज किया है, तो बेसिकली आप यहाँ पे they're talking about how more jobs can be created. So this topic again was there in your current affairs, ठीक है। जॉब्स कैसे क्रिएट करना है, आप गिग इकोनॉमी की बात करो, आप सर्विस सेक्टर एरियाज की बात करो, आप लेबर इंटेंसिव बात करो, सो दैट आपका प्रोडक्टिविटी लॉस ना हो यहाँ पे, ठीक है। सो यू हैव टू लिंक दीज टू आइडियाज, ठीक है। तो दिस वाज आई थिंक वेरी मच करंट ओरिएंटेड, आई थिंक आई वुड पुट दिस इन करंट अफेयर्स, ठीक है। ये जो हमारा 12th क्वेश्चन है, स्टैटिक एनर्जी, ये जो है ना हमारा रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी वाला, अगेन दिस इज स्टैटिक पोर्शन, ठीक है। कंप्लीट स्टैटिक पोर्शन से आया है, ये हमारा स्टैटिक पोर्शन से आया है, ये आप करंट के थ्रू कर सकते हो दिस पोर्शन, ठीक है, ये इंटीग्रेटेड वाला, ठीक है। तो मेजरली व्हाट यू सीइंग इज कि मिक्स ऑफ करंट अफेयर्स एंड स्टैटिक पोर्शन। दिस इज अगेन if I talk about food processing, I would call it static. PDS, again, a static portion. Inclusive growth, again, a static. Plus, I think if you want to quote some examples, you can get that from current affairs. And this is current affairs. ठीक है? तो इस बारी की इकोनॉमिक्स वाले सेक्शन में भी बहुत ज्यादा स्टैटिक पोर्शन पे फोकस था, ठीक है। तो अपने प्रॉपर जो स्टैटिक वाले नोट्स हैं उनको प्रॉपरली कवर करो, एंड प्रीवियस ईयर थीम्स इनको प्रॉपर कवर करो, एंड आंसर राइटिंग अभी से शुरू करो, ठीक है। थोड़े से साइंस एंड टेक के क्वेश्चंस आई थिंक इफ यू गाइज वेंट थ्रू, दे वर बिट ट्रिकी, ठीक है। अब जैसे ये वाला जो क्वेश्चन है, ये साइंस एंड टेक का है, न्यूअर हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम्स, ठीक है। आपका लाइफ एक्सपेक्टेंसी बढ़ा है तो न्यूअर हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम्स भी आ गए, सो आई थिंक यू कैन मेक गुड गेसिंग हियर। जैसे आप यहाँ पे बात कर सकते हो, आप कम्युनिकेबल डिजीजेस जो राइज हुई है उनकी बात करो यहाँ पे, ठीक है। You can talk about some old age related problems, you can talk about dementia, you can talk about Parkinson diseases, okay, these kind of things you can talk about, okay. Third thing you can talk about is, again, when you have more and more population, the pressure with respect to healthcare is increasing, okay. So you have more and more life expectancy, and that is also becoming a newer health challenge, okay. So that is also one thing you can talk about. Fourth thing you can talk about is fourth thing, again, see, Abhishek, see, Samachar Manthan do have some portions with respect to your static portion, okay, but as such you can have to go through your basic books, like आपका Ramesh Singh हो गए, आपका polity के लिए आपका Lakshmikant हो गया, you have to go through your basic books to get grasp over static portions and write answers with respect to that, ठीक है. So again, one more thing that I wanted to talk about, new health challenges. See, the quality of healthcare, okay, is not very good if we talk about the higher age people. Okay, so that is also becoming a major issue with respect to health challenges in the community. So again, kind of not static portion, current affairs related portion, but you had to work with some guesswork here. Again, this question here, sixth question, I think I would put it in a very difficult category. क्योंकि एकदम suddenly you come across what is cellulose. ठीक है? If you're from science background, I think that is something that you can handle. ठीक है? But again, what are the natural processes through which the cellular goes before it becomes carbon dioxide? Again, that is very confusing, especially during that examination pressure. It becomes very difficult. So basically, see, cellulose, what is cellulose? It is the largest amount of animal material that is being produced. ठीक है? तो basically it's an organic material. ठीक है? हमारा जैसे अगर हम purest form में बात करें, even cotton, ठीक है, is something like 90% of it is actually cellulose. ठीक है? तो हमारा जो plant fiber होता है, that is actually majorly made out of cellulose. ठीक है? So you had to talk about cellulose there, how it's an organic material and all those things. जब natural processes के through हम बात करें तो कैसे होगा? Number one, combustion. We fire them up, and obviously carbon dioxide, water, and other end products they release out. Second is decomposition. When those die, they mix in the soil, and then again there's this decomposition. ये आपका environment वाला जो cycle है, उसके through you can highlight here. ठीक है? Third is digestion. Again, some herbivorous species, they go and eat those plants, and then again there's this conversion of these cellulose into carbon dioxide, water, and other end products. Okay, so again I would put it in a difficult category. Okay, क्योंकि ये questions randomly थोड़ा सा मतलब difficult to tackle है. So I think it's better that you take common sense guesses also. कि like if you know कि ठीक है cellulose क्या है, like basic, अगर if you're from science background, I think basic geography, I think we go through a lot. ठीक है? तो somebody is writing textile and industry was a news, I think that's why. Again, Abhimanyu, see when you read through textile industry and then suddenly you think about cellulose, that kind of relation is very difficult to make. ठीक है? Working in reverse engineering is something that can work, but for future it becomes very difficult. So let's be realistic here. Okay, honestly speaking, if you knew a bit about cellulose, you could have tackled it easily. Just say if you would have written combustion also, I think you would have fetched few marks. Okay, overall I would put it in a very a bit difficult situation. Okay, next is your question on photochemical smog. Photochemical smog आप prelims में बहुत ज़्यादा पढ़ते हो, ठीक है? This is something that you cover very much in detail in prelims. So I think that information is something that can be used here. This particular protocol, again, a bit tricky, right? You might know, you might not know, but again, I think you can make some guesses here. Because again, this protocol, if it's linked to photochemical smog, it must be talking about pollution and everything. So yeah, it does talk about, it talks about why it actually pollution multiple angles. It talks about eutrophication, it talks about acidification, ozone, everything it actually covers, right? So this protocol again is very important for prelims next year. I think for prelims also you can keep tab on this particular protocol. I think that would be important. Next is your question. Next is your question on cloudburst. We've had one question in prelims already, so I would put it in a simpler category. It was there in current affairs also. We've had cloudburst recently also. Okay, Amarnath Yatra ke time pe that happened. So again, I would put it in a simple question. See, again, security related. Again, guys, security related, there are few themes. Mark it out. Number one is organized crimes. Second is cyber security. Third is your terrorism. Fourth is your naxalism. Okay. Fifth is your money laundering. Okay. And nowadays cryptocurrency. And cryptocurrency or that cyber security or that ransomware, all those things I think can be mixed up. Now these themes, if you look at in your answer, are majorly covered in each and every paper. ठीक है. Naxalism we covered in our test series also, and it's there in this year paper also. See, यहाँ पे ये रहा Naxalism. साइबर सिक्योरिटी आप लास्ट 3-4 के पेपर देख लो, हर एक में साइबर सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन तो है ही. We also covered in our test series, ये रहा इधर पे क्वेश्चन थीम भी. तो सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन प्रिडिक्ट करना तो बहुत ईजी हो गया है. यूजुअली मेजर थीम्स पे रहते हैं. ठीक है. आपका मरीन सिक्योरिटी वाज आल्सो इन न्यूज, वी आल्सो कवर्ड दैट इन टेस्ट सीरीज. तो देयर आर फ्यू कॉमन थीम्स जो रहते ही रहते हैं. तो अगर आपका आउट ऑफ से 4 और 5 क्वेश्चंस आपके 2-3 भी मैचिंग थीम्स हो जाए एंड यू हैव एक्चुअली प्रिपेयर्ड कंटेंट प्रीवियसली ऑन देम, सो आई थिंक इट्स गुड. जैसे क्रॉस बॉर्डर वाला भी इज अ वेरी बिग इशू जो हमारा सिक्योरिटी में रहता है यूजुअली. ठीक है. तो कुछ थीम्स अगर आप प्रीवियस ईयर के थ्रू भी जाओ और आप मॉक्स के थ्रू भी जाओ, तो यू कैन एक्चुअली वर्क अपॉन दी सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड पोर्शंस. ठीक है. तो आई थिंक ये वाला पोर्शन जैसे मरीन सिक्योरिटी, ऑर्गेनाइज्ड क्राइम एंड नेक्सलिज्म एंड साइबर सिक्योरिटी, आई वुड पुट इट इन अ इजियर कैटेगरी क्योंकि ऑल ऑफ दीज थीम्स हैव बीन कवर्ड इन योर प्रीवियस ईयर आंसर्स. ठीक है. तो नथिंग आउट ऑफ द ब्लू दैट हैज कम इन दिस पर्टिकुलर आंसर्स. ठीक है. एक थोड़े बहुत एनवायरमेंट रिलेटेड क्वेश्चंस आई थिंक डिफिकल्ट थे इस पेपर में, और साइंस रिलेटेड. ओवरऑल आई थिंक इकोनॉमिक्स एंड सिक्योरिटी रिलेटेड दिस पेपर वाज इजी टू टैकल. ठीक है. आपका ये जो क्वेश्चन है जेम्स वेब वाला, ठीक है, करंट अफेयर्स रिलेटेड है. आपका हबल टेलीस्कोप है, उससे यू कैन कनेक्ट दिस क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. एंड यू कैन राइट दिस पर्टिकुलर क्वेश्चन. अगेन थोड़ा सा फैक्चुअल है. I think that is something relevant with respect to science related questions. आपको थोड़ा features वगैरह देखने पड़ते हैं. But again, आपके previous year prelims के theme में ये properly covered है. ठीक है. And since science related questions have been there in your question papers a lot of time, जैसे जूनो मिशन आ गया था. ठीक है. आपका चंद्रयान आया हुआ है, आपका गगनयान आया हुआ है. ठीक है. आपसे एक क्यूरोसिटी रोवर पे आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछा हुआ है. तो जब साइंस रिलेटेड थीम्स आर देयर एंड उनके फीचर्स स्पेसिफिकली आर बीइंग आस्क्ड इन योर मेंस क्वेश्चन, so I think it's better that whatever major portions that are there in the questions that year, ठीक है, do cover it properly. ठीक है. That is very important. Next is your vaccine development. Again, I don't think this question should go wrong because last 2 साल से यही चल रहा है. आपका वेक्टर बेस निकालो, आपका कोवैक्सीन डिस्कस करो, कोविशील्ड डिस्कस करो. आई थिंक आई वुड पुट इट इन इजियर कैटेगरी क्वेश्चन. ठीक है. थोड़ा सा डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चन जो मुझे यहाँ पे लगा था ये क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल वाला था. ठीक है. इसमें भी आई थिंक अगर आपको स्पेसिफिक मेंशन करने हैं क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल, तो आप प्रीलिम्स में तो पढ़ते ही हो. ठीक है. तो वो वाली चीजें आप प्रीलिम्स की यहाँ पे मेंशन कर सकते हो. बट जस्ट इन केस आपने प्रीलिम्स में नहीं कवर किया तो थोड़ा सा आपके लिए क्वेश्चन डिफिकल्ट हो सकता है. जेनरिक कंटेंट आप इसमें यू कैन स्टिल राइट. यू कैन टॉक अबाउट ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, यू कैन टॉक अबाउट इफेक्ट ऑन ग्लोबल क्लाइमेट. ठीक है. बट दिस ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस एंड देयर लिंकेज टू global warming and getting in some specific details from Kyoto Protocol, that would actually differentiate your paper finally from the real paper. And make it a differentiator like from other papers. Okay. Lastly is your coastal erosion in India. I think this was a good question. I think usually previous year में अभी 2-3 साल से तो ये theme नहीं cover हुआ था. But coastal management as such, I think जब हम CRZ वगैरह, all those topics were there. Okay, last few years say we've been talking about this guidelines, we've been talking about Shailesh committee, okay, that has been there in your current affairs. So I think with respect to that, I think ye topic was very well covered in your current affairs. So I think with that you can handle it out. Okay. Guys, this was a basic idea of how do you tackle this year's papers for your next year preparation. If you have some specific question, you can raise your hand. I'll tackle them questions here. Other than that, I've actually provided you to the link that you can register on, and you can get all the details with respect to our test series. So any specific questions that you have with respect to this year's papers and your future strategy? Abhimanyu is asking important themes to keep in mind for 2023 preparation. Okay. Common takeaways. Number 1, focus upon your static portions. Keep them limited. Stick to the basic books. Don't overdo the common resources, right? So number 1 is your covering the basic portion. Do it properly. Second is your current affairs. Don't wait for the last few months to get a complete compilation of the whole year and then jump to your current affairs. Make sure that the current affairs are covered on monthly basis, right? Whether it's through Samachar Manthan, where you can get a detailed video coverage and anything, right? But don't keep the current affairs for the last 2 months where you get a complete compilation of the whole year, because that compilation will not help you in mains. It might help you in prelims, but it will not help you in mains. Okay, so current affair related strategy, stick to one magazine and keep on revising it properly. Third is your practice. Now practice, start your answer writing with your previous year question papers. And secondly, your mocks. Mocks is very important because again, in mocks, you just not practice the right art of answer writing. You practice your structures, you practice your time management, you practice your how do you invent points or how do you innovate points under pressure. Okay, so that kind of thing is also something that you practice while you write answers. Okay, and with this, if you get a mentor call with respect to, I think if you're starting any mock test series right now, always have a mentor call with it, because it's very important that whatever mistakes you're making, somebody identifies them and tell you to correct it. Otherwise, it's just a loop that you'll be writing this paper again and you'll be making the same mistakes. So it really does not really help you. Okay, so whatever mock series you're joining, make sure you have mentorship call with it. If you want to look into our test series, I've given you the link. Please register to it. Okay, so these are the 4 strategies with respect to your mains preparation. Next is, can you explain the terms elucidate, analysis, and others? See, Anuja, when you're talking about analysis, critically discuss, in those type of questions, always presenting to both the sides of the coin is very important. Like if you have to critically analyze, that means you have to talk in against argument as well on that particular question. Okay, that is also very important. So in these kind of terms, both the questions, both the arguments is actually important. When you're talking about elucidate, justify, discuss, then the statement that is given in the question, you have to expand a bit more on that. You can give the other side, but keep it short, like divide it into 70-30 portion in your answer. Next is your note making strategy. Again, Gautam, when you're talking about note making strategy, that is something that we discuss through our mains answer writing also. Like whenever you write a section paper, we talk about what all notes you have to focus upon when you're doing, say, one subject to another subject. But basically, I think notes should revolve around value addition content only. Because if you start making notes of Lakshmikant, it will not make sense. You'll have to make the notes of the whole book. So it's not a very kind of a smart strategy to make notes of your basic books. Just focus upon notes making with respect to your value addition. And that thing you learn with writing answers only. All right. Next is, Sumit is asking, when will you take the next session? Sumit, I think it will be somewhere in the next week. A proper notification and everything will be sent out on our website. So you will get to know about that. Abhishek is asking, can we trim a part of question, let's say giving 5 points, we give 4 points to make space for value addition? Yes, you can do that. I think, Abhishek, that would depend on specific question which you're writing. Okay, that might actually differ from question to question. But yeah, if you want to get in some map, if you want to get in some flow chart, then you can reduce the number of points that, say, from 5 to 4. It will not harm your total score of the answer. You're welcome, Abhimanyu. Hope to see you in the next session as well. Soresh, go ahead, ask your question via audio.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am,
Hi,
I have recently joined the MEP 2023,
right.
and but I have not started the answer writing yet, because I was thinking that I should make notes first. So what would you advise, ma'am? Whether I should make notes first or continue making notes with answer writing?
Soresh, can you I'll write my email here. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Just send me your payment ID of the program and your
Okay,
mobile
ma'am.
number. Okay, we'll schedule a call and I'll tell you about your note making process on phone itself. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. I am
Yes.
uh, I am sending you my email ID. Right? Just email
Yes,
me
ma'am.
your mobile number
Sure, ma'am.
and
Sure, ma'am.
your payment ID. All right.
Okay. Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. I'll email you the call schedule for this
Sure, ma'am.
particular
Sure, ma'am.
discussion.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, Saurash. Next, Shetty is asking, how do you learn keywords like assimilation? Focusing on these keywords. Okay. See, again, Shetty, these kind of terms is something like when you cover your society portion, in some articles, assimilation and everything is something that is there in the vocabulary of that particular subject. Okay, one thing you can come from your static portion. Okay, just say आपने NCERT, you cover the NCERTs and you look at the vocabulary, go through the last few pages where this whole vocabulary section, okay, the word wise definition and everything is given. Okay, that is also something that you should cover. Okay, second thing is through newspaper reading. Okay, make sure you go through editorials of every day. See, you are covering magazine, good enough, but make sure that at least for 40 minutes in a day you go through the newspaper so that your proper vocabulary and everything is actually also developed. Okay, so I think through these two portions, because otherwise these kind of terms is something very difficult to guess, like what would come in the paper or what would not. So that actually naturally comes through reading only. I think that is the serious shot that you have to give there. Sumit, you can also email me. You can also send me your payment ID with respect to the program. Okay, and then I'll schedule your call. Okay, next is, ma'am, I'm struggling a lot with time management, too much. Anki, right? So Anki, you have to write more and more answers. You have to attempt answer writing. That is the only tool with respect to time management. And nothing else, I think, will fetch you there. Few of the structures, I think, just say when we write answers in our mock, for example, for ethics, I've created few structures which I tell the student, which can actually help them out to reduce the timing. So few of those things can help you out. So I think creating proper structures, preparing your value addition material beforehand, and finally writing many mocks. I think these are the 3 golden rules with respect to time management in your mains paper. Next is Abhishek. Many people often say to focus on what's asked in the question, but let's say giving government policies, if not asked, it is, see, when you're writing government policies, you just mentioning them as references. Just say when I said Accessible India campaign, I was not explaining the whole campaign there. It was as part of value addition in that particular program. So yes, you can mention government policies, no issue in that. Anything else, guys? Any more questions here? Okay, you're welcome, Abhishek. Amit, the session for essay will be taken care by Zishan sir. He's the faculty who's handling essay at Civils Daily, right? And you'll get a proper notification with respect to that discussion as well. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you so much. And Anki, you were talking about covering syllabus. Again, like I said, Anki, see, there are 2-3 things that you have to make sure. Ek to create proper timelines, like you should know, like in the next 5 months, roughly how am I covering the portions, like say polity, maybe in next 30 days I have to cover. You're welcome, Chanakya. Thank you so much. In the next, like you need to have a proper long-term schedule. Okay, number 1. Number 2 is keep your static portions very, very small. Don't overdo them, right? Keep just one magazine. Like your content, resource content has to be very limited because the revisions have to be more. Okay, So that is also another important tool. And thirdly is again, make sure that you keep the syllabus in hand. Okay, stick to the syllabus, the portion which the syllabus is talking about. Okay, stick to that portion only. Don't go beyond that. Okay, you do properly your previous year question papers, you'll know which portions are important, which are not. So pay more importance to important portions. That is like a smart way of working. I think, yeah, that is how it's covered. So guys, I think we'll wrap this session. You're welcome, Amit. And weekly Samachar and also monthly. I think there's monthly compilation of the Samachar month and also Akshay. It depends upon you, whatever you think is necessary. You're welcome, Abhishek. Thank you so much. You're welcome, Anki. And let's connect in the next session whenever that session is